But we're at 6:02. So we're going to start recording, and we'll also do a roll call for our administration and board members. And Amber is not here at the moment, so we want to make sure we are saying everything so that she can get it from the recording. So
Kelly Charbel.
Jamie Dickey.
Dave Venter.
yeah.
Jeff Fishwick. Emma Vastola.
Craig Peter.
Lauren Fearman.
Cheryl Hammond.
Julie McKenzie.
And on Zoom, we have Dave Martin. So our first order of business is to appoint a board chair, because we're here doing a reorganization. So I would ask for nominations.
I nominate Kelly Charbel.
I second that.
You guys run a railroad?
Off the bus.
Are there any other nominations? I call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Congratulations.
Then the motion carries, and Kelly Charbel is our chair.
I feel like it was 20 years ago.
I know, we can do this again. It's so fun.
And I will turn it all over to you.
All right, so we need to approve the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions? Since I wasn't a part of making it, nothing extra? No? Okay. Motion to approve the agenda?
So made.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of February 14th, 2024. Second. Any discussion?
Dave has his hand.
Sorry, Dave.
You're
You're on mute.
There, does that work now? Okay, I'm sorry, I tried to unmute back on the agenda. As part of our budget discussion, should we also discuss the bond and our capital plans?
That's up to you. When we
Okay.
discussed,
That would be my suggestion.
decided that was,
Do we need to make a motion for
yeah,
that?
you would have to
Yeah.
make a motion to add it to the agenda.
All right, so if you would like to make that motion then, Dave?
Yes,
Somebody want to second Dave's motion to talk about the bond and capital improvement plan around the budget discussion time?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All right, we will add it. All right, so
You actually approved it.
no, I don't think we got that far now. But all right, back to the minutes. We have a second on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And any discussion about the minutes? All right. All those in favor of approving the February 14th regular meeting minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Board communication, board comments. Public comment. Go ahead.
Marielle Maringolo. I just would encourage anyone who has come here that had questions on the budget that kept them from approving the budget to bring those up now so that the board can address those in their discussion of the budget. Procedurally, the way this meeting works is now it's a chance for public to ask questions and make comments. So if there are any questions out there, they should be brought forth.
I'd like to,
Go ahead, Otis. Thank you, Mary.
I don't know what I guess there's a new revised budget out from the administrators. I haven't looked over that one yet, so I can't really say what it was. Opposed. But,
Could you say your name, please?
Otis Nelson, Ludlow, sorry. My recommendation would be to do a 5% decrease in the budget. And that's, we're at $1.5 million increase in the budget this year. And that's just too much. I mean, we may not be paying it right off the top, but somebody's paying it. So, and look out for the rest of the taxpayers too. So that's it.
I just was hoping that maybe, perhaps Cheryl could speak to the fact that the new funding formula increases in spending would hit our tax rate. Is there, I'm sure you can explain this at some point. It's just something that I don't know in which fiscal year that actually comes to play. I think it's this next one, but I think it's a helpful thing for people to know as much as possible.
Do you want to do that during the budget time, Cheryl? Yep. Any other public comment?
Kowski, not all of you. And I think, I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but I guess it is because it's just a public comment. But I think from my perspective, it was really confusing, the difference between the bond and the budget. And I think a lot of people just heard increase of 20% tax and freaked out and voted no. And so from my perspective, I think some more communication on the difference between the two. And how it would actually, how approving the budget would actually impact the taxpayers versus that like big scary 20% increase that everybody is hearing about. And I'm happy to help with that. If there's, Craig and I had talked about maybe a really succinct way to communicate that because I know everyone's busy and there's a lot of information to absorb. Maybe it's a visual or just something that can be shared that lets people understand very easily that the budget is not the same as the bond, and approving the budget doesn't mean that your taxes are going to go up 20%. Because I think, honestly, this is anecdotal evidence, but my conclusion is that it was just a lot of misunderstanding.
Do you mind stating your name again, just because we're recording and I didn't hear you and I hope she can?
Sure, it's Katie Klichkowski. It's impossible to spell. Okay.
I can help Amber with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Zoe Tripoli. I work here at Mount Holly School, but I'm also a Ludlow resident. I know this is not any one person's decision, so I don't say this to place blame, but I do think it was an irresponsible decision to put the bond and the budget on the same boat. I think a lot of people were confused and misinformed and were panicking, rightfully so, because it's big numbers that you're staring at in a voting booth while also making other big decisions. So I think that's really stressful. The other thing I want to address is for local taxpayers, I know that through the Act 46 process, we were promised that we were going to be saved a lot of money when we decided to close Black River High School and middle school. And I think regardless of where you stand on whether or not that was the right decision, obviously that hasn't happened regardless. So looking forward to the next budget vote, the decision to gouge our school budgets is not going to save us money in the long run because we will have to educate our students. Even if they have to be educated elsewhere, we will just lose a say in that process. So if you have questions about things that regard school budgets and where that money goes and where it's coming from, talk to the people in the schools. Because if we continue to cut our budget to the point where our schools become inoperable, we're just losing the ability to help our kids in our communities.
Thank you. Other public comment? Nobody online?
I just want to reiterate
And
what
you are?
I am Craig Huckleader.
Thank you.
What Marielle started with, we really need to hear everyone. Like if everyone in the room could just share a little bit of their perspective about why this didn't meet, a yes vote standard and what we should do moving forward. The more everyone speaks to that tonight, the more we can understand whatever, like whether you voted yes or no on the bond, yes or no on the vote, all positions are important to understand, so we don't cut too much or cut too little or not address something. Really is that hurdle is, I can't vote yes because of this. So I just want to support what you said. Some people, aren't going to want to talk, but you can put it in the chat. You could write a question that the board chair could read. I think you can even make a comment anonymously, but I'm not sure. Through an email, they can email you.
But,
They can email.
I know when sometimes, and I don't know, I'm looking at Lauren, anonymous things have been sort of hard because they don't carry as much weight as, I don't know in this case how that would be. If it's just a question, that would be, I think, harmless, right?
I think during public comment, we asked that everybody identify themselves. It's part of the process.
But even if you don't want to identify yourself, you can email me and I will try to address the comment and respect your comment. Even if it's not in this.
Amy?
Amy Turbo from Mount Holly. I just have a couple questions. I've heard, I don't have kids here anymore. I know there's a water issue. Is that being addressed? It's been more than 2 years. Another concern that I have is that I've heard that the septic, there's an issue with that. It was an issue when my kids were here, so I'd like to understand that better. I know we need a furnace. The other concerns that I have, we're trying to cut things. I heard today that possibly a position may be cut in half, and I'm not thrilled with that at all, and I'll talk about that later. Have you maybe, and I hate to say this, having one school, you've got 2 schools that are in dire need of repair. Have you thought about maybe one school and putting your money into that? Also, maybe having one principal and a vice principal instead of having 2 principals. These are valid concerns, and we need to look at this because we're putting money into a building that is falling apart. Say nothing about the kids' education.
So I think those would be things we can talk about at budget. Any other public comment? Go ahead.
But one comment, or I guess just like consideration in favor of no budget cuts. And again, this is just anecdotal, but my family came from a really large school district where there were 25 to 30 kids in a classroom, and my kids were nobody in that classroom. And when my oldest daughter first came to this school, she was in 3rd grade at the time, I believe, she was well below the average in her standardized testing. And because Mount Holly is a small school and she gets so much individual attention, she is now up in the blue. So she's like as high as you can be. And that never would have happened in a classroom setting where there were, 25 to 30 kids and she didn't have that extra help that she needed. And that's really my biggest concern. There are things we can work out where, fixing the oil tank, do it one at a time, or, the septic, I guess, is not an issue anymore. There's things we can all of those building concerns. I think the heart of this, because it's a school and it's education, is the kids, and kids are getting out of it. And the value that I see in Mount Holly is that small setting with the individual attention. And to lose any of our teachers, I think, would be the biggest tragedy.
Thank you.
Jessica Sargent. Would we actually lose teachers if we moved them? Because it would be bigger classrooms. And I'm not understanding how, maybe we would lose duplicates of certain things, but I don't understand really how we would lose that many teachers because there are more students when you have to accommodate the large number of students.
That would be a board decision if those types of cuts were to be made. That would be a board decision with Edmund to decide how that all took place.
And we don't have any say. Are you saying that?
Not that you have zero say, your input is certainly valid and we would take that into consideration, but ultimately it would be at this level that those decisions would be made.
Wouldn't that be a community vote? Wouldn't it be a vote?
Yeah.
Close the school.
To close the school, to close the
Both
school,
towns would
right,
have to
sorry,
vote. It
right,
would be
yeah.
just like the library.
Right, to close the school, yes. I thought you were asking about teachers, I'm sorry.
But no, it was, because like, I mean, if it's about our kids, why aren't we getting a say if they get decreased, if we decrease by consolidating to a school, one school? Not decreasing the teachers, decreasing the utilities for two, the maintenance for two, the transportation would still be for two, but that seems to be an issue at both schools, from my understanding. Ludlow has issues as well with busing. So, I mean, that's everybody's issue lately. It's not just our school. But I mean, I don't understand, like, we would be cutting back on expenses that we would still be able to keep teachers in that budget if we're cutting out the basis of, like, you know, the lights, the fuel, the whatever. Why wouldn't we still be able to keep teachers if we, as a community?
That would be a discussion at a community level then. Other board, sorry, public comments, yes.
Millicent Johnson, Mount Holly. In talking with people in town before and after the budget and bond failed, I found that it was a lot like what Katie was describing. There was confusion about, because the bond and the budget were so close in number, some people thought you were asking for the budget twice. And there was confusion about that. And I think if the budget had been presented solo, we wouldn't be looking at having to re-vote on a budget at this time. In attending the informational meetings and the school board meeting, I don't know where you can do any cuts. It sounds to me, from what I had heard, that you have done everything that you possibly could think to do without hurting the education of our children. And I applaud the board for that. And I really think what we need to look at is doing a solo budget, maybe making a few tweaks, but I don't see how you can make, I don't even see how you could make 100,000 less.
Thank you.
My name is Ted Panassi. I'm speaking as a taxpayer and a parent in this community, also as a teacher. Something for the board to consider is that the Slate Valley Unified District, which is Castleton, Fairhaven, a very large district that I work for, just reapproved their budget. They had their previous budget voted down this past voting season, and their new budget cuts are only $150,000 going back out to the taxpayer. And they are a significantly larger community than us, and their cuts are significantly lower that they're going for their first time. So I'd like for the board to consider smaller cuts than what could possibly be proposed. I think once we make cuts that are close to 5%, you're looking at the only way to make those cuts is into our teaching staff and positions. That will directly affect our communities and our kids.
Go ahead. Lauren, are you watching that? I feel like I can't do two things at once. Okay, go ahead. All right, thank you.
I'm Darcy Gibney. I teach first and second grade here. I'm a native Vermonter. I went to a 2-room schoolhouse in Wyndham. We've heard it. That's also a school that's being considered, closing due to their small numbers. I wanted to say, I have a lot of things to say, but what I'm going to limit myself to is, so I'll probably chime in later with other things, but the question of whether or not to close the school and consolidate it, I mean, wow, there's no going back from that. I drive through Belmont every morning on the way here from Andover. And I'm sad because I see a lot of kids, houses that I know, but most of them are ski houses. Those houses are empty on that main street until weekend. And then they're full of cars from Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts. I don't disparage that. I know that's how we make our living. But I think if you close this school, that town is going to look more and more like that over time. And you have to really think about if that's what you want. Do you want that town to only come alive on weekends and locked up tight during the week, the way I see that Main Street when I come to work every morning? Where there could be more children out playing, going to the lake, going to the library, and having a live town. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Go ahead, Otis.
Well, I'd like to say, in regards to what she was just saying, that if we keep going at the rate we're going with the taxes, you're gonna have the same effect. People aren't gonna be able to afford to live here. So you gotta make a choice, whether you're gonna make it affordable for people to live here and have big families and kids in the community, or make it so expensive that you can't afford to live here. So you have to be more community-minded as far as being able to afford it.
Thank you. Millicent?
Yes, there was one other thing that I meant to mention that didn't compute with people, and that was that there was an increase in the budget, but the tax rate was going down, and it just didn't compute with people. To them, it didn't make any sense. They didn't believe it.
We're glad to go over that again.
Julie?
I'm Julie Gorai. I've lived in Mount Holly since 1986 when I moved here with my husband from Massachusetts. We raised two kids here. They went through Black River High School, both doing incredibly well, thank you. And I'm also an employee in Ludlow and Mount Holly School. I'm a librarian in both and other things as well. After school program, for example. What else to say? I agree 100% with what Melissa was saying and Marielle and some others about the confusion. I think there was a lot of confusion and a lot of negativity about the bond. And I think it carried over to the budget. I think when I got my pamphlet in the mail with the information about the town, about the school budget, I also saw immediately that it was going up 19%, but I did read further and understand that the tax rate, which is what I pay, was going down like 0.001 or some number that was at least a negative. And then I also remember, I love to read newspapers, but I don't, do it much anymore. So I read the Mountain Times all the time, free, and I pick it up. And I remember seeing a chart in the Mountain Times showing how the new act, whatever that the legislature passed, showed the effect on each town. And so some towns were getting hammered by this. And then I saw Mount Holly, Ludlow, and I was like, this is amazing. All these other towns are being so negatively impacted, but Mount Holly, Ludlow is like plus 20% weight per student, which is amazing. Such a gift to our town to be able to keep everything the way it should be, as it is. And I just thought that was great. And I don't understand how that didn't translate to everybody and why people don't understand that what you're paying isn't going up. Also, on my teacher salary, I do have to say, I qualify with my husband every single year for years for the homestead exemption. And it does help. We get hundreds of dollars back to pay our local taxes. We're not rich people, we're working people, we live in town here. What else to say? I'm talking way too much. But I do have to address the idea of if you want to kill a town, close the school. Look at what happened to Black River. One of the reasons the population of students at Black River is going down is because they have to send their kids quite a distance to a local high school. Green Mountain is not closed. Springfield is not closed. Mill River is not closed. Mount Holly is somewhat blessed. We have Mill River right down the street. I don't know which school you're planning on closing, but if you were to close Mount Holly, why would people move here? No one wants to live in a town with no school. That's why we lived here. That's why I've been living here for almost 40 years. It's because we have a school here. When they closed Dog River, yeah, we're close enough. We can do the Mill River thing if my kids were still going here. It's a viable option. I'm just thinking, you want to have more and more, and while the state is coming in and no kids and no families, that's what you get when you close the school. I don't even know where that talk is coming from. It's just amazing to me. I don't really have anything else to say. I will maybe later.
Thank you. All right, are we, go ahead.
Cheryl, because I still find the little calculation sheet perplexing. Am I reading it right that weighted equalized per pupil spending actually goes down by like $9,000? That's with the new weighting formula, right? But still spending a lot less per pupil.
It's a change from the equalized pupils to a long-term. So if you look at, we'll have a sheet up here shortly that will show the conversion, and so the change in the cost per pupil is next grade.
I just have one quick question about that. So we can really get, is it accurate that our per pupil rate is significantly less expensive than the state average? Is that accurate?
State average.
If I remember correctly, I remember it being somewhere between 16 and 17,000.
That's the old one.
Okay.
Could you say that again, Cheryl?
That's the old rate.
Yeah, last year's rate.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we have to look because there may be some schools that are not that high. That would be the schools that were designated by this act. No, they cost more. Okay. So that scenario.
We're below.
So we're going to talk about the budget later on.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I just switched to look at something. Now I don't have the agenda. Are there other public comments? All right, we will have another opportunity at the end for public comment. Superintendent report.
Right, before I start, just so that Amber gets it, Marie Gambino came into the meeting just in case she can't see. So we have all 6 of our current board members present. We've got a lot to do tonight. Most of what I need to talk about is already in the agenda with the budget. I did want to share with everyone. I shared the letter with the board, but last night I had received a letter from Judy Pullinen saying that she was going to resign from the board. Her letter was that she was writing to inform me and the board that I'm resigning my position on the school board effective immediately. So that was yesterday. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you these past years. Wish Lauren the very best in retirement. I've always believed that a community has an obligation to support its children and that support of schools makes a community stronger. Unfortunately, this time I'm unable to give the board the energy and attention it deserves. Best wishes to all of you. So I want to let everybody know, and Paul Orskowski also did not run again for the board. We have an 8-member board that currently has 6 people on it. Our TRSU office has put out an ad to request the people who are interested. These are both Ludlow positions. If people are interested to send an email communication, you can send it to your board chair or you can send it to me at central office, and we'll tell you the process for looking to be appointed. And it is in everybody's best interest to have full membership on the board. At the moment, we have 4 Mount Holly representatives and 2 Ludlow representatives. So we hope that there will be 2 Ludlow residents who will be interested in serving. Right. Let's see. Just so going over the numbers, I think most people have seen them. Both of our school budgets within the TRSU, as well as the bond, failed. In Ludlow-Mount, 1,051 people voted on the budget and 1,028 voted on the bond. Last year, the total numbers were around 600 to 700 voters, so we had more turning out. It was nearly double the amount on the Green Mountain side. That happens with presidential primaries, and also a lot of interest around the budget numbers. For Ludlow and Mount Holly, the budget vote was 41% yes and 59% no. For the bond, 32% yes and 68% no. And the votes between the 2 towns were pretty similar. For the budget for Ludlow, 206 voted yes, 332 voted no. For Mount Holly, 223 voted yes, 290 voted no. Both districts now have to schedule another budget vote, and we continue to do that until a budget passes. If we don't have a passed budget on June 30th, then the money is pulled at the rate of this year's budget so that the schools can be open. However, that would be insufficient to pay even without any increases, because you have built-in increases to salaries because of contractual obligations, and health benefits are up by 16.4%. So we're going to talk more about the budget in a minute. I would also share with you a couple of legislative updates. The House Education Committee is drafting a bill around school construction that will establish a facilities master plan grant program to be administered by the Agency of Education, and would support supervisory unions and independent career tech education districts to develop educational facilities master plans. And the AOE would develop a minimum requirement for the master plan content. It has been a concern for a while that several years ago, Vermont stopped contributing from the state level to construction and upkeep of buildings in Vermont. And essentially, we are I believe, the only state in the union that does not currently have state-supported assistance for school construction. So hoping to see that move forwards. Let's see.
That ended in 2008.
2008, thank you. It will likely take several years because nothing moves quickly for that to come into play. But there is a school construction task force that is meeting and going along with the move to have that bill pass. There is a bill conducted with literacy in the Senate Education Committee that, if passed, requires that all schools use universal reading screeners to identify students with reading struggles or students who show characteristics associated with dyslexia in kindergarten through grade 3. There were 2 Senate bills around that have all been incorporated into one, and that would mandate professional development and training for all Vermont licensed teachers who teach pre-K through grade 5. Some people have probably heard about the act out there to potentially regulate the use of electronic devices in schools. There was talk about completely banning all cell phones in schools. The current proposed bill is charging the Secretary of Education with developing a model policy regarding the use of cell phones and personal electronic devices in schools by the end of this calendar year. And it would require that the AOE submits a report to the Senate and House Committee by January 15th of 2026 on how well the various model policies that would be put into place are working. There's also, people have heard about the act being proposed about hybrid meetings, that there was an act that proposed that all public meetings would be required to have a Zoom presence. And that committee removed that requirement. So it is now required for all public bodies of the state, but not public bodies of municipalities. So school boards can, and we have no plan of doing away with Zoom, but at the moment there isn't an act that would require it. And then
when you say Zoom, I just want to clarify, you just mean an electronic.
Yeah, yes. But they initially, the bill was going to require that there had to be an electronic way to attend meetings, and they have revised that now to be something that they're going to require for state agencies, but will remain optional for school boards. And then the last thing I just want to share with everybody is that there's a fair amount of talk going around about the fact that on April 8th, there will be a total solar eclipse. And while here we will not be in the totality space, it's a little further, we'll be in, I think, the 95%, which is pretty impressive. And we are on vacation in all of our schools, so on that day, so we won't be doing school-related activities. But if people are interested and want additional information, Vermont Public on the radio each weekday evening at 4:48 p.m. does an Eye on the Night Sky report with astronomy expert Mark Breen from the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium. And he is talking about various things that are available for people to get more education around that solar eclipse. You can visit the Vermont Public Educators page and get more recommendations.
Careful your eyes.
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions for Lauren? Principal's report.
All right, so this evening, Emma, Deb, and I are going to be co-presenting quite a bit of information about our continuous improvement plan. And so we're not going to give a regular typical principal's report. But before we jump into it, I'm thinking we recognized Paul's service last, and I just am so grateful for all of Judy Pullman's service, and just want to publicly thank her for literally years and years of dedicated service.
Can I just pull on just the continuous improvement plan presentation that we are going to be talking about during that part of the agenda is linked click here for curriculum link in the agenda. So just.
So you
You're not going to present it.
I will, yeah.
Right
I
now.
will present.
Yeah,
No, not right now. It's on the agenda for later on.
Oh, yes.
So you guys are just going to present it at that later date. You have nothing additional. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay, curriculum report, that's it. Facilities report. We're over there somewhere.
Good evening, everybody. Very short report tonight. We're continuing moving at Ludlow with the Division of Fire Safety, our fire marshal's report. Deb and Mike have been working on that. They're moving forward with getting some estimates. Ben will be going back. It sounds like on Monday for a follow-up there, so that's moving along. We'll be talking about that a little bit at the next meeting, more in detail. I've been struggling with Otter Creek Engineering with the PFAS here at Mount Holly. Since Craig left, Craig was a huge advocate for us here. Anytime I called him and needed an update or see where the state was going, I always got a hold of him. And since he's been gone, I have not been able to get somebody on the phone at Otter Creek. Just heard from somebody today, left me a voicemail and said, let's talk on Monday. Friday at the TRSU meeting, he left me a voicemail and said he'd talk on Monday. So I think today's Wednesday. So he called me today and said next Monday. So again, I feel like we've gone backwards again and moving back we were moving forward as Craig was helping out with the state, and we seem to be more at a standstill. So if I don't hear from him, we'll start making some trips to Rutland and just showing up at their door and knocking on their door to talk to them, find out where we are at with that project. Heard from some engineers, obviously we're looking with the bond failing and not knowing what we're doing, we're moving forward with, how do we address some of the problems at our schools, and we start looking at 5-year plans and how we determine what we're gonna do and how we move forward with that. So we started thinking about some different avenues. Did talk to the engineers about, at least the boiler project here and got some more down to earth numbers. I think I shared them with Cheryl. I think she's gonna bring that up later unless you want me to do it now, Cheryl. Okay, so Cheryl will talk about that when it comes to part of the budget. Obviously, here, the biggest thing is the boiler, for sure, we've been talking about that.
For the tank.
In the tank. That's all part of it.
Yeah.
That's all encompassed, the whole project is one project, so. If anybody's got any questions, Julie?
Thank you for your persistence on the PFAS issue. My question is for the contractors non-responsiveness. Is this a place that we have a contract with, or are they state contractors that we have to use?
So when I called Craig Jewett, and asked him to help, he had told us at our meeting that if we needed help, he would carry on. So I called him and told him that it was very frustrating that I couldn't get somebody. He was gonna talk to his old bosses at Otter Creek and see if his new firm could take over the Mount Holland project. So
they would transfer it.
They would transfer.
So TRSU has a contract with Otter Creek?
So our insurance company, and it's whether it's insurance or grant funded or the state is paying the bill. Cheryl can explain that a little bit.
So it depends on whether it's the investigation or the remediation.
Yep.
So the state is paying for the water part to get the clean water back into the school, and that's somewhat stalled because it's an approval process that's just taking forever, and the flood pushed it back. The insurance company is paying for the remediation and finding out where it came from. And we're kind of stalled on both ends of that, so. Yeah.
And halfway through, well, not halfway through, when we were about ready to take action, the state then changed its requirements about what the numbers have to be, which meant we then had to start over again. Todd has worked fairly tirelessly to make this happen. And the problem with making it happen is at a state.
So to answer your question, Julie, I will be talking with this new gentleman on hopefully Monday. He said Monday, so I'll bring his phone off the hook Monday morning and see where we're at. If I don't feel like Otter Creek can go, I'll call Craig Jewett back and find out what the process is, or get a hold of somebody at what they call the department, which is the Department of Water, and find out where we're at, because I feel like this now is not moving forward at all. We're back at a standstill, so, which is unacceptable for everybody.
Yeah, I find that contractors non-responsiveness really unacceptable.
Yeah.
So if that means changing contractors or
Sure.
looking at whether they are in compliance with their contract or district, I totally support you on that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Craig had one, and then Dave.
I just want to add a little on what you both said about the process so far. You say it so tactfully. I'm going to say it a little plainer. The state bureaucracy, this started as a $200,000, we can fix this. We're up to $1.2 million, which they're saying they're going to still pay for. Not sure if I believe it. But the misinformation that's been spread about we're not taking care of this is such a mischaracterization. I hope it's a misunderstanding. And Amy, I'm not talking about you. That's a valid question. I'm glad you raised it. But this is not an us problem. We have been working tirelessly for years, countless hours. Both of us, and Cheryl and Lauren, and the whole team of us. And this is ridiculous. The state impact on not being able to solve this problem. And I'm going to leave you with a little fact. We're spending about $5,000 a year on bottled water that the state grant is paying for until it gets fixed. And if you do a little bit of math, that's 220 years of bottled water that we could have for that $1.2 million, which I'm sure is going up more. And if you think, well, we're not paying for that, we are, because that's state money. And that's, again, these politicians in Montpelier not looking out for us, and spend, and bureaucracy rules. And I don't see any representatives here tonight I bet they won't ever come to any of our.
So Craig does bring up a good point. I'm sorry. So we did ask this question about the water, right? If it's working now, why can't we just use that $5,000 a year and use bottled water? It's not harmful to wash your hands, you can boil it and wash the dishes, everything's great. And they said because they know it's a problem now that the state requires us to fix it.
It's not a quote unquote solution.
Yeah, so we can't move in that direction. And just for some clarity for people who haven't been here, this project was on the verge of pulling the trigger. Blueprints, water, plans in.
2 years ago.
The pump stations were designed, everything was ready, everybody was ready to pull the trigger, and the state decided they wanted what Lauren was saying, they wanted the parts per billion.
Trillion.
Was that
Went
one
from 20
level,
parts per trillion to what, 5?
No, now they want it at 0.
Now they want it at 0. That's the next trillion.
You don't even know if it really does anything.
But don't vote them out.
Dave, you had a
No,
question?
he answered my question,
Okay.
$5,000 a year.
They should follow your lead.
All right, so
Votes out.
next.
Can I ask Kelly one more question? Sorry. Just going back to the water thing. Years ago, COVID time, over at town hall, and again, I haven't followed all of it because I don't have kids at the school, but it's a major concern that they have good drinking water. I thought that the town approved, or I know the town approved, that you guys were going to tap into the town garage to get the water. So the state is the ones that are holding you guys back.
So that's 2 projects ago. So we were,
So we're wasting all this money, sorry.
So the plan was that they drilled the well, or no, take that back. They bored out the well at the town garage, tested the water, designed a system to put in the town garage, did the horizontal drilling to hook that water into the school. Then they changed the parameters. We're still going to pump the water from the school, but the new system wouldn't fit in the town garage, so then we're going to put a system in a building here on site. The parameters have now changed again. And every time they change, it's at the state level and not from us. And our hands are tied.
It's not the town's fault either.
Yeah, it's not the town. The town's been awesome. They've been great about, they were going to let us use part of the town garage and the well stills water is going to come from their well, but it's just, we're caught in this democracy of water. The water division is
bureaucracy.
It's actually an anti-democracy.
Meanwhile, how much PFAS is in the plastic bottled water?
What's that?
Right, it's probably just as much PFAS or whatever as plastic bottled water.
Yeah, no.
It's frustrating. I understand it's frustrating, but just so everybody knows, like Craig said, we're on this all the time, and it's very frustrating.
And I really commend you, so you are like a dog.
Don't try to take it away.
I really appreciate your advocacy on behalf of the district.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Old business, 2025 budget.
Do you want to, is there anything for the financial report?
Sorry, I skipped it.
I'll just add a couple things to what Todd was saying about the PFAS. So we did get a grant. Look, we got a loan that we don't have to repair. We have to repay. And it changed departments. And now no one from the new department was on that. Figure out how to ask for that. So it's obstacles like that. And our insurance company owes us money, but I think they're frustrated with the process with the state. So they're trying to hold their money to get some leverage. And so it's a vicious cycle we're in. Financials, February financial is in the folder. Normally what I talk about is what's currently over budget, but just telling you about some things that are coming. We will be over on the line of the level principal because we hired a new principal. We didn't know what the salary would be at the time of budgeting. And Ludlow-Mount Holly both needed an additional pair of students, and so we will be able to budget on that line. We do have savings because there was a teacher in Ludlow that we budgeted for but ended up not rehiring. We spent 56% of the budget. We should be around 66, so we're looking good there. So we are good on track there. Any questions about the financials? All of these can be found if you take the link on the website. You can find these all in the folder. And I want you to look at Zoe's question about
savings of the high school. So part of the articles of agreement were that we do a 5-year analysis, and I did that in June. And if you go into this link, we'll get a folder that says 5-year analysis, and there's a whole presentation that I presented to the board with the recommendation that we do it again because it wasn't 5 complete years because of the timing of it. So we'll do it again with another 3 estimates. If there are any questions, can you look at them? That's all I have till we get to the budget.
Okay. Sorry, I keep switching to the budget and I lose my agenda. So we're at the budget. What a nice segue.
All right, so we're going to.
Can I interrupt you? I see that. Should we worry or is it just, I don't know. Can they hear us still? You can hear us?
You can still hear us, can't you? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that message comes up, we don't know what.
Okay.
But we can't get.
There are a great many things about the wonderful world of Zoom technology that I don't believe that. But as long as you can still hear us, even if it tells us, there's a message that says this Zoom room won't function, but it clearly does. So we move ahead with that. So when the budgets failed, Cheryl and I immediately went through and started to look again at what we might be able to update. The first thing that happens is we talk about, and Cheryl brings this up every time we talk about the budget, is that a budget is always, when we present it, it is a snapshot of the moment in time. And the things that go into the budget are changing on a daily basis. People move in, people move out. Students who have some special needs, we discover that somebody is moving or a new person moves in. We hear over the course of the year that a teacher is resigning, or we get information that somebody's going to be adding a health benefit plan next year, or they're going to be reducing one. All of those pieces change what the budget is. So we put it together a budget that we put forwards to the board. And even without all of these things, if you asked us 2 weeks later to tell you precisely what we would expect the budget to be, it would look a little bit different. So between the time of our putting the budget numbers forward in January until the budget did not pass in March, we had a couple of things happen. One of them was a special education teacher within the TRSU who resigned, and we were able to move some things around to have one teacher cover both of the programs. So we were able to pull a teacher salary, special education teacher's salary, out of the TRSU budget. So when we went through and presented the TRSU budget to the TRSU board last week, we presented it with a reduction of roughly $150,000. Not a lot of places to go. The TRSU budget, which everybody has concerns about because people forget that that budget doesn't exist over someplace by itself. Every penny of it is part of the assessed to school districts. So each district is paying for your special education students' needs. Each district pays their share of the salaries of your superintendent, your business manager, your curriculum director. So when you vote yes or no on your district's budget, you are voting yes or no on the TRSU budget as well. The biggest portion of the TRSU budget is not the salaries of your central office personnel. It is the special education piece. There's very little control over that. When somebody resigns and we don't have to replace them, then we can pull that out. If we had an increased number of students coming into those programs for next year, we would have to replace them. Right now, we don't. So that's where that piece is coming from. We went through now, we've had discussions with Craig and with Deb, and I will tell everybody, both people who want to see us cut a large amount and people who want to see us cut nothing. The budget we offered you in January, our proposed budget, was the budget we think is best for our schools. And what we're going to offer up to you now is a budget that we think will cut some numbers and do the least harm. This board gets to decide whether you want us to cut further, whether you want to accept what we're putting forward, whether you want to tell us to put things back in. So I'm going to go through a list with you of the things that we pulled out. One thing, though, I do want to address before we get to it is this board decided more than a year ago that in terms of class sizes, we were looking to right-size our classroom so that when teachers left, either resignation or retirement, if all of our classes were not at the size of between 13 and 18, we would not automatically replace a teacher. So we've had discussions about cutting a teacher in a building where we have 4 of our classes below 13. We had a resignation in another building, so we are not going to have to fire anybody. But we're not looking to make class sizes be 30, 35, but we are acting under the instruction and agreement of this board that we should be looking not to maintain class sizes of 10 and 11. So when we get to that, I'll go through the details of that. So the couple of things that we're going to cut, I'm going to pull up, or that we are proposing cutting. You will decide whether you want to do that or not. The couple of things that I'm going to show you the whole sheet here, and then I'll talk through the specific details of it. And this is available on the folder, in the folder on the TRSU website that people can see. I know it's hard to see here in the room. So this is the total budget would be $8,768,220. That is still a $1.1 million increase over last year. The total increase in spending is 14.36%, not 19%. And we will talk in a moment about that. The base tax rate for your education budget is reducing your base tax rate because of the changes in the funding formula. And I know that it feels like we're talking garbage when I say that, but it is the reality of the new funding formula is that we are being given credit for having more students than we were given credit for last year because the weighted average is increased in areas like ours, as Julie was saying earlier, areas like ours that have a higher percentage of students with special needs in a living below the poverty line and in a rural area. Some districts were disadvantaged by the funding formula and they can raise less money for the same tax rate. Some were advantaged. We can raise more money for the same tax rate for this 1 year only. So are taking advantage of that to put additional money into our capital reserves that we need to do some repairs was something this board decided to do in part because doing that, while it makes a scary number for an increase in spending, was not raising your tax rate at all. In fact, it's lowering it. So the things that we went through and proposed changing to get to this number is we had put in for both Ludlow and Mount Holly funding to have building substitutes in place. This was something we did with ESSER funds. So rather than calling a sub when you need it, if you have somebody who is hired to be a building substitute who comes every day, there's almost never a day where we don't need at least one substitute, but then that person knows they have a job, they come every day and they receive benefits. We decided when we talked about it to put that into the general budget. We funded it through ESSER with the ESSER funds because it's a good thing to have. Having said that, both Ludlow and Mount Holly have struggled to find somebody willing to take that position and stay in it. So while we did that for all 5 of the schools within the SU, there are only 2 schools that have been able to find somebody that they found 3 years ago. and that they've consistently had in place. Keeping money in the budget for something that we haven't been able to fill is something I would argue when we were in the best possible budget is something that we should do. And when we're in the place that we want to bring it down as far as we can, that is not a good place for our money to be. So that was $79,044. We reduced the capital improvement by, that is this number over here, right? We had reduced that number by 65,000 from where it was before. We put in a number based on what our best estimate at the time was for the one thing that we were certain we were going to need to do at some point over the next year, which was needing to replace the heating system in this building, which has failed a couple of times. And so we wanted to put that money in. We've had more phone calls with people about what that is likely to cost and been able to get a better number for it. So we reduced that amount by $65,000. And then we did reduce a teacher at Mount Holly. In the combined, we have 2 sections of each of our combined classes. And for next year's numbers, our estimates are that in grade 3-4, we will have 21 students. That's a class of 10, the class of 11. It's a little above, when you combine them, to be a class of 21, above where we would like to be at 18. However, we have a teacher who resigned at Ludlow. So there is a position for the teacher to move into, so we don't have to brief anyone. And there are 4 classes next year at Mount Holly. One would have 12, one would have 12, one would have 10, one would have 11. And at Ludlow, at the moment, we have classes of 20, 22 with 20 is the prediction, and one with 15. It doesn't seem appropriate to me, for us to maintain 4 classrooms below 13 in one building. And I was comfortable with keeping that when the budget is something that we think we can move forward. Having said that, the agreement this board made was that when somebody retired or resigned, if our class sizes were not between 13 and 18, we would not automatically hire a new teacher. And we have class sizes that are not between 13 and 18. So that's our proposal. We do not think that will be harmful to our students. I do not believe that a class of 20 or 21 is too big a number. In most of research that talks about small classes, when they talk about small classes, they mean things that are no more than 18 or 20. They don't mean classes that are 5 or 6. That would be considered micro. So again, and if the board has changed its mind and they don't want to have us try to not have classes at 10, 11, and 12, you'll let me know. So we also had a recommendation from our principals to cut half a custodian at Ludlow, to cut a regular ed para also at Ludlow. We're required.
Over a half, sorry.
Half. We have a para position at Ludlow currently that is 0.5 to serve special education needs and 0.5 as just a helping out within the classroom. We are required to have our special education paras, those things are written into an IEP. Beyond that, it's a nice thing to have some additional assistance for people when we can have it. And it's good to have a full-time job because we struggle to keep people when you make things part-time. But when we have instruction that we're looking for things to cut, these are the things that we would propose, not being good for us, but being the least terrible for us. We have a recommendation to reduce the Mount Holly office manager from full-time to part-time. We reduced a Title I local share for the Ludlow reading interventionist. We have a 1.0 reading interventionist at Ludlow who is funded 0.7 through grants and 0.3 through our local funding. The feeling is that we can get the services we need, with that being a 0.7 position that is still funded through grants, and taking down the 30% that we were paying. There's a $75,913 reduction from the TRSU assessments because of the reduction that we talked about when we started. We also put forward a contingency for salaries for our non-bargaining units, employees. We put forward a contingency for all of our employees, but with our bargaining agreements, our teachers are contractually entitled to the raises that are in place within the contract. So are our support staff under their bargaining agreements. We generally try to match our non-bargaining unit people, who are our front desk receptionists and some of our tech people and some other positions who are not in the union. We try to match that to the bargaining unit people. Next year, that would be for everybody a roughly 4.75% increase. We've taken it down for the non-bargaining unit people to 4%. And then finally, that's a total of about $5,000. And then finally, we have a 4,279 adjustments to people's benefits, because we know some people are taking different benefit packages for next year. So that is a total reduction, Cheryl, of 306. Yeah.
366,000 children. Sorry. 366,313, which is a 4.77% reduction in the overall. That's previously proposed 4.77. Yeah.
And I know there are questions. Carol, before we take questions, are there other things? Or we can go through the tax? Okay. Would you like us to go through how this the funding formula affects our tax rate before we take questions?
I think so, because I think a lot of questions will be based on that.
So let me pull that up.
We do, real quick one. If you click on the item on the bottom of the screen, we get the specifics that you just talked about, the FTEs, each school and stuff. We'll let you up. Okay.
Because we don't know what it is. All right.
Okay, so this is a format that we've used for the last couple of go rounds of the budget, the informational meeting, as well as the last meeting. What we're doing is comparing it to last year. So this is the new revised budget compared to last year. So you'll see as you go down, the equalized pupil, we cross that out, we change it to long-term weighted. So when you convert last year's number, the 328.29, you get the 566. So they did that just so we could compare apples and apples instead of two different formulas. So it gives us an increase if we're comparing the new number of additional 85 students, which is a 15% increase. And that's where a lot of our extra money comes from. So the cost per pupil under the old formula would have been about 13,000, and now we're at 12,717. So that's a 2.9% decrease. For the yield, which is what raises $1 for every $100 of your tax assessment. We're using the 9,783. This is a moving target. For anybody that's seen the presentations before, we started out with 9,392. We dropped to 9,191. If Act 127 wasn't revised, we would have been at 7,171, 191, something like that. This is where we currently are. I'm constantly sending information to the state because as people go in and reduce their budget, that number's going to go up. When that number goes up, our tax rates go down. So the hope is that some of the people who either didn't vote or are changing the budget as they reduce, that will go up for us. So this brings us to a base tax rate of $1.30. So that's 13 cents less than what it was last year. So it's a 9.4% decrease. Then we have to play with the yield. So in Ludlow, the yield dropped from 87.36 to 77.73. And Mount Holly dropped from 88.79 to 77.01. It's roughly a 10% drop for both. So it changes our tax rate from the $1.30 when you apply the yield to it to $1.67 and $1.69.
And that's the number we have no control over, right? The CLA?
The CLA we have no control over.
Right.
So the important numbers I want you to see are in line 20 and 21 over in column J, the 1.82 for Ludlow and the 4.46. This is the number that your percentage that your tax rate will go up. So the state has put out information that everybody's taxes are going up 18 to 20%. That is not true. That is a state average. I'm sure there's people that are going to be on the high side because that's how you get an average, but this is where we are. 1.82 for Ludlow and 4.46 for Mount Holly. So if you scroll down just a little further, Lauren.
Is that per 100?
So that's just an overall tax rate. Down here is the per 100.
Okay.
Sorry. So the difference between the applied CLA last year in the tax rate and the proposed anticipated tax rate with the yield applied, you see the tax difference of 3 cents for Ludlow and 7 for Mount Holly. And so you see we're annual per 100,000, annual increase per 100,000 home site. It nets out to be $30, but you have a $94 per 100,000 savings because of the decrease in the current budget as we have presented tonight. $124 of that is because of the decline in the CLA. You have a $94 credit because of the decrease in your base rate. So it's $30 per 100,000 per house site at Ludlow, 70 in Mount Holly. They were 110 and 150 in the first round.
Cheryl, I don't know how math works when it gets this big. I'll fully admit that. But, and I'm just throwing a number out there because I've heard it tonight. If we were to take the budget as it was voted on, reduce it by 5%, whatever that number comes to, and apply this formula, how much would it save on a house that's worth $100,000? Can we do that math?
Well, we just reduced it by 4.some%.
So it would go down slightly more. 4.77, so we're almost.
So that's the number we're talking about. If we hit our budget hard, people are going to save a little bit of money.
So
that is what I'm trying to get at, right?
With the proposal
yes.
But the proposal we just made is a reduction of 4.77. So we wouldn't. I would begin to think about what it would look like to reduce it a further 5%.
Right.
We've reduced it nearly 5% from where it was when it went forwards in March. So, and to the best of my knowledge, that 5% number is a number that a couple of people have come up with. It's not a number that this.
No, I was just, but my question, and I'm still sorry, it's late and I'm tired, but maybe I'm not getting it. If my house is worth $100,000, which I don't know whose is, but.
This is easier math.
Right. So if my house is worth $100,000 and my old budget in January, the one I voted on originally versus this one, how much am I actually saving? 30.
So I said 150 from the old one, 70 from the new one, so 80,000. That's maybe we wish. $80 per 100,000.
So you're saving $80
per 100,000.
Right. So if my house is 200, it's 160.
Yes.
Correct. Dollars.
Yes.
Over the course of 12 months if we save our taxes a little each month.
Dave. Because now it's at 30, so for a $300,000 house, it's a $90 increase over last year.
As opposed to if for a $300,000 house, it would have been a $330 increase. And it, whether 330 feels too much to you or not depends on the individual.
Right, yeah, your privilege level, I don't know. Dave.
Well, the only thing I can think of is being involved in this kind of stuff for 20 years, and I still don't understand it well enough to be able to articulate it to somebody else. Just think about how the general public is going to receive this. It's going to look like smoke and mirrors, and somehow we have to come up with the old KISS formula, keep it simple, stupid, and just put down what actually the savings will be and what that bottom line figure will be without going through these other gyrations, because it confuses the hell out of me.
So basically right now, what you said.
Well, the bottom line is the projected tax rate for Ludlow will be 1.82%, not 18. The projected tax rate for Mount Holly is 4.46, not 18.
Oh, you still confused me. What does that add up to? It's $1 per 100.
Down below here you have, it is going to be for Ludlow, $30 for every $100,000 worth of tax.
That's going to be the tax rate.
That's going to be the tax rate.
Not always is 70.
Now it's $1.43. It shows up.
It's a different.
In that convoluted.
So we've done the
formula.
math out for you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the tax rate on your tax bill. Now you're going to see that tax rate be $1.30 until they apply the CLA, and then it will go up. And that's what the CLA does to it.
Right.
So the bottom is just us extending out in dollars what that would be from a percentage.
Okay. It's starting to be simple again. Now, next year, what's the question going to be? Okay, that's great for this year. What's going to do next year?
So next
This is going to come back to bite us.
It's not going to come back to bite you, but next year you will not have the ability to increase your spending while having your base tax rate stay the same. Because that's a.
Okay.
Right. No, there's no more penalty.
It's not, the penalty went away when the legislature voted House Bill 850, which is what allowed some people to revote the budget or postpone voting on their budget. Now, it is that the calculation that gives us credit for more students has happened. So we're not next year going to have an increase in the number of 85 students. We're resetting our baseline.
Gotcha.
And because that baseline is being reset this year, it is a one-time only opportunity to increase your spending while maintaining your base tax rate. Next year, it's not going to come back and bite you. Next year, you'll have to have the same conversation.
It is what it is.
Are you going to raise spending because things have gone up, or aren't you? You will not have an opportunity to say, let's put an additional $300,000 into our capital reserve fund because our tax rate won't go up. It will go up if you put that in. This year, it doesn't. You've increased your spending by, even with this budget, by 14%, and your tax rate is low. That won't happen next year.
So what I think I'm hearing is this is the year we want to put money away for repairs and stuff like that, which we know we need. So I don't see how reducing any of that is going to benefit us in this revised budget. Because there's so much that needs to be done in both schools, with or without a bond. So
we're happy to put that 65,000 back in. But that'll change these numbers. I appreciate the opinions. However, there are people who have the opinion that without a bond in place and with the reductions, that people will see it pass. So,
Julie,
if you're willing to let people ask questions.
Well, I wanted to get Julie first because she keeps raising her hand and then we'll, yeah.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the sort of close scrutiny of our budget and trying to do our best in a really difficult situation. And I completely trust the central office's stewardship of our finances. And I do trust you to make recommendations in the best interest of educating the students, which as a board member, that is the most important thing to me. I was a little bit, you went through the portion of the revised budget a little bit quickly that talked about the educational impacts, particularly the classroom consolidation and the manipulation of some of the positions. So can you walk me through that a little bit more carefully? Because I wasn't sure I really caught where those, cuts came from.
Absolutely. So we have, within both Ludlow Elementary School and Mount Holly School, we have had discussions over the last 2-3 years about the need to right-size our classrooms. And the agreement from the board was that a proposal that we made to, if our class sizes, ideally for our elementary school classes, are between 13 and 18. We don't want to fire people. So the proposal that the board adopted and directed us to move forward with was that when a teacher resigns or retires, we look at our classes, and if our class sizes, all of them, are not between 13 and 18, I mean, if they're higher than 18, then we're hiring another teacher. But if we have classes that are below that number, then we would look at whether we could reasonably put classes together so that we would not need to hire additional teachers. And at Ludlow, over the last couple of years, because of doing that, they have reduced a teacher so that what used to be a single teacher for each grade became 2 years ago a combined grade 3-4 classroom, because there were 6 kids in grade 2 the one year and 7 kids in grade 3. So for the following year, we said somebody left, we weren't hiring a teacher, we were combining that into a combined grade 3-4 with 13 kids. We have continued to have that, and the numbers go up and down. So, and we also had this year, when we had the 1-2 combined as well, because of where the numbers were. And again, we didn't let anybody go. We had a teacher leave. So in our 5-6, where we were going to have 26 students, if they were in a single class, we kept a teacher. We actually hired a teacher for somebody who was leaving, and initially had them divided into 2 combined 5-6 classes of 13. They've been put back together again as a single class with 2 teachers teaching, so taking care of those students. And at Mount Holly, 3 years ago now, we went through, because we had a bubble of one enormous number of 20-something and 5 or 6 in another grade, and combined all of the classes here into 1-2, 3-4, or 5-6, so 2 sections of each. So for example, next year, the expectation is that there are going to be about 36 5th and 6th graders. We're going to have 2 sections of 18 each.
At which school?
At this school.
At this school.
At this school.
So currently, you have 2 1-2, 2-3-4, 2-5-6.
Yes.
Okay.
And when we look at what our numbers are for next year,
yeah,
we are going to have we would have in our 2 5-6 classes, they would be roughly 18 in each one of those combined classes. However, in our grade 3-4 classes, there would be 10 students in one class and 11 in another. In grades 1 and 2, it would be 12 students in one class and 12 students in the other. When we're looking at, in one of our schools, a combined class of 20 for 1-2, a combined class of 15 for 3-4.
3-4 is 20.
3-4 is 20, and then 5-6, a combined class of 15 next year. It does not seem appropriate to me that we would say that we are going to continue to fund to have a class of 10 and a class of 11, rather than having a combined class of 21. In Ludlow, we're not hiring another teacher to make that combined class of 20 into a class of 10 and a class of 10.
Have to do that twice.
Yes.
In order to make it equitable.
So we went forward with that when we were in the best possible budget. But when we're in the place of looking for where is it reasonable to make reductions, we're looking at trying to keep our schools equitable, funding to have a class of 10 and a class of 11. When we have a place for that teacher to go without firing them, because we have a resignation in our 5, well, in 1-2 and in 5-6. So we have a spot for them to move into. It doesn't feel fair to me to say that we're going to maintain that and tell a teacher in Ludlow that they're going to teach a class of 20. But we're not going to do that here.
Sorry, so just to clarify, there's only going to be one first and second grade class at Mount Holly next year. You're going to take a teacher.
3-4. There would be 1-3.
1-3-4, and then you would send that Mount Holly teacher to Ludlow.
Yeah.
I thought I heard you say that 2 grades were going to go down to 1 or 2.
We have 2 sections of 3-4 here at the moment.
Yes, and that will.
One would have 10, one would have 11. Well,
Okay.
not at the moment, we would next year.
Yes.
So we would combine that into being one section of 3-4
Okay.
with 21 kids in it. And the teacher who is currently teaching a section of 3-4 would be offered the position that is available. And that's the argument that we have when we combined classes in Ludlow as well. And the instruction from this board is we are trying to not run classes of 10 and 11. We're trying to run classes that are somewhere around 15.
So I wasn't on the board when that all happened. I don't know what the sort of informational inputs were at the time the board voted on that. But I guess I would like to hear, as an educator and from the principals here, your sort of continuing belief or your belief at all in that perspective about class size and educational impacts and school community impacts.
Glad to hear from teachers and from our principals. I'm also glad to tell you that, as I said, when people frequently quote research talking about the value of small class sizes, that research is talking about 18 as a small class size. There is research that will tell you, and in educational research, you can find something to tell you anything you want. But there is research that will tell you that, and I know from my own experience in the classroom, consistently running micro classes of 6, 7, and 8 is not something that I think is particularly beneficial for students.
Right, your peer group is small, a social opportunity.
Okay, so, sorry, I was just always had our hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Just, so someone correct me if I'm wrong, but the understanding that right size classes being 13 to 18, I'm guessing that doesn't take into account the extremely high need that we have in some of our classes. So when you're looking at a class of 21, but potentially based on the percentages of students on IEPs in Vermont, we're looking at 5 IEPs in that classroom. That's really challenging. And I love working with all my students, but oftentimes feel like an octopus trying to do things in many different directions. And that's with like a class of 15 to 18. I had just for 3 hours because of testing things, we had 23 students in our classroom today. And it was overwhelming. It was a learning experience. So I think when we're looking at high need, which is why we're getting a lot of this money, it's my understanding that when you make those classes bigger, that those classes are a real challenge to teach and teach effectively. We want to do the best by our students.
Just want to add one more thing. We're also talking about multi-age classes too.
Yes.
So you're talking about the difference between a six-year-old and an almost 8-year-old, and the difference in ability. It's just, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, these classes that aren't at 18, they're at 20 in Ludlow, and you have some students who are truly young first graders in with some pretty well advanced second graders, and it's really quite a span. Not just dealing with 20 kids, including some, you know, a good number perhaps on IEPs, but you also are doing this whole multi-age thing of years and developmental differences, just natural developmental differences. It's a little bit challenging, and it seems like we seem to be okay with going past 18, but we're not so okay with going under 12. I don't know. I also know that in Mount Holly, in what would be the 3-4 class next year, I guess, we lost several students who were here at the beginning of this year that would have taken those numbers. I think there were some kids in either the third grade and the second. We lost at least 3 or 4 kids in that group. And if they were to come back, then all of a sudden the numbers are totally, the point is moot. The point would have been moot if they hadn't changed.
I just want to look at the board for a minute and make sure, like, are we okay with having, you know, usually we say board or public comment for public comment time. Are we okay with discussion from the public at the moment while we're talking about the board?
Somebody said we want to hear from teachers.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I thought somebody said we want to hear from teachers.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that with the board, I mean, we also say that our meetings are going to go from 6 to 8, and I want to make sure that we have time to finish our agenda and honor people's timeframes, and so how does the board feel about that? That's all I want to.
I think it's a good discussion, except it's not on the budget necessarily.
Right.
It's related.
Yeah, related. Do people feel for another few minutes having public comment in public conversation, I guess it is, under not public comment?
Well, if I'm going to be asked to take a vote on the proposed budget, I really feel like I need to get to the bottom of my questions about this. But I actually also really appreciate the public conversation because we don't have data, right, on why the bond failed. We don't have any quantitative data on that. So hearing from people, I think, is helpful.
And I have no problem with continuing to have the input. I think it is good to have. It does make things run longer. I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea that without having warned it, we're going to have a discussion about a policy that this board has in place. And if you're going to change that policy, I think you should have.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the business of changing the policy. I hear people's concerns about the policy, but I don't.
I think it would be well worth revisiting with a different board, because the board's opinion about it can change. But it's making me a little uncomfortable that with a board that consists of 6 rather than 8, and where 2 of the people who were the biggest proponents of that policy aren't on the board anymore, to think about making a change to that policy without having said that that was something that might happen here today makes me nervous. You can decide that under these circumstances, because it was never an absolute, it was that we wouldn't automatically do it. You can decide that you don't want to recommend cutting the teacher. I just would be, then you're doing that based on whatever your feeling is about the particulars of it. I'm made a little nervous over the idea that you're going to make a decision that you don't want to maintain the effort to try to stop having tiny classes without having warned that so that people can have that full discussion.
So I think our discussion should then be based a little bit closer to the budget, but certainly hearing input and then following up again with public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end.
I guess my perspective on that is if the policy was
I don't think it was a policy, it's a guideline, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
supported the cuts, then I think I need to understand that to understand the sort of wisdom of making the cuts.
Yeah, and I do have a little bit of difficulty with we made cuts to one school based on the board's belief that it should do that, and to decide that we're not going to do that for another, it makes me a little uncomfortable. It doesn't feel fair to me to say, you're going to have class sizes of 20, and we're not going to hire a teacher to make that be 10 and 10.
Sure, but if the budget had passed, that position would,
It would have
maintained
yep.
that. Okay. So there were a couple of other personnel impacts that you talked about that I want to understand better. The custodian at Ludlow, is that a reduction of an FTE, or is there a part-time
There's a
position
part-time
that we would eliminate? Yes. Okay. And can you talk about the reduction in the paraeducator?
I can speak to that. So when I was hired last year, I was told that in the budget for this current school year, there was a half-time general ed para and a half-time special ed para, and it was a 1-year contract or 1-year consideration for that position. The para has continued to work in special ed, and based on needs, that half-time position in general ed would go away, but would likely be absorbed in some capacity within the special ed realm based on needs. So even though it's a reduction to the general ed budget, it would likely be assessed in a different place for special education, or a shift of special ed para from one program to another, or part-time in one building and part-time in another building. So it's not eliminating a person, it's eliminating that general ed portion of that position.
Okay.
And there was also, Julie,
the Mount Holly office manager reduction.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
So, I'm not a fan of this cut. Redmond, because she's here tonight, she does an amazing job. I think that a big dilemma right now is that people who are saying we need to cut are right, because if we can't afford it, families can't afford to live here, then we're not going to have a school. So on the one hand, that's what Otis and many people that Otis is speaking for, and that I think that's true. So we tried to give you our very best budget, but now we're hearing we need to cut. And so going back to the 3-4 teacher before I address the office manager, it would be a lot easier if we weren't looking at a class of 10 and 11, right? If we were looking at two classes of 8 or 9, we wouldn't be worried about Zoe's point about what if this turns into 24 or 25, and what about the special needs? And Katie's point about when we came here, my daughter got, you're going to get more individualized attention and a higher quality of instruction with 2 classes of 11 than you are with a class of 21 or 22, right? So that's the whole dilemma to me, and I don't know if that's helpful to hear, but we don't want to cut any of this.
Yes, we said before, we gave you what we think is the best budget.
And we're also really trying hard to have a kind of a lifeline, it was so hard to have these conversations with all of these real people who are so dedicated and so skilled, whether they're a custodian or a para or an office manager or a teacher or you name it. Do we need these people? Yes. Yes. Can we find a place for them to land in a similar or at least comparable role? That's our goal. That's partly how we chose what we cut. Are we sure we can do that for every single person in a way that's going to make them really like, okay, this is just as good as what I was doing? I don't think we can say that for 100% sure. We're going to try our very, very best. But no, if this budget hadn't gone down, we weren't talking about cutting our office in half. When I first got here, we didn't have any secretary. We had a person who did cleaning, who did not do snow removal or any kind of maintenance, and that was not her fault. That was just, she's a great person, but like our jobs have changed. Like, do you want to pay the principal to answer the phone and remove snow? Sure. I mean, I do that anyway, but sometimes Al needs help. It's a lot. We've got a preschool classroom out by the window. That's a lot of snow. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell people because I don't even know, like, why didn't people come to us before the vote and say, or let the board know? I know Lauren was prescient in saying, hey, I don't recommend you putting the bond and the budget on the same day. And I think out of a good intention, this board, out of good intention, saw all of the needs and said, well, let the people decide. We'll put it forward. They want to vote down the bond and vote the budget in. But look at how long we've been talking about this stuff. It's complicated. It's really complex. And even no matter what we do, we cut 0, we cut 5%, we cut 10%, we're trying to go for the middle. Right? 5%, right?
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. We'll see what show us about social media.
Go ahead. Craig, I 100% agree with you, and I don't think that the school manager's hours should get cut. I don't think that's right. And I don't agree with the reading specialist for Ludlow's hours to get cut. I don't think that's right. So, and there's a lot of people, not a lot, there's a few people here that I love, I think are great, but I don't agree with them. And I think that not having a school is going to decrease your property value in the long run. So your property is going to be worth less money if you don't have a school in Mount Holly. We don't have bus drivers to drive children from Mount Holly to Ludlow. Mothers and fathers can't do that. They have to work. And if they can't, and there's ice and snow, they're not going to drive 15 minutes to the schools. I totally disagree with that. Now, if the schools don't get fixed, your property value is going to go down right there. So you have to fix things when they break. Just like you fix your house when it breaks, you fix your school. So these need to be done, and I don't agree with cutting this budget. I do like what Mr. Panassi said about doing a very, very small cut. Very small. This is a big cut, and I don't think we should do it. We need it. So that's my opinion.
Amy, go ahead. So I have a couple of questions. One, in regards to the office manager, how was that decided when Ludlow has more students than Mount Holly? And, Mount Holly has more than Ludlow. Sorry, I knew what you meant. First of all, if anything's going to be cut, it should be them. Second of all, I am a huge advocate for Raylan or anybody that's in that office. My kids went to school here. She is the most important resource for us as parents, our kids, and I think that it would be an injustice to do away with the position to part-time, and I really think the board should really consider that, because let me tell you, she was a right hand. She's the mother, she's the nurse, she's anything you want her to be. So please do not take that spot away. Thank you.
Just to respond to that before we get into other comments, we could not possibly cut same for same across the schools. Like the custodian cut is happening in Ludlow, it's not happening up here. We tried to overall balance the cuts. And it was a whole group of us that really worked hard to try to decide what to put on the table.
And of course, we didn't want to give anything up.
And they are us, actually. Because we're one school with one budget and one school board and one tax rate. So there is no them and us. There's a we.
And to be clear, none of these are things that central office is telling principals they must do.
We're all.
Everything on here is something that all four of us agreed to.
Yes, and it was a hard thing to
it's
negotiate
not
because
a,
you had to
I
have.
said this or she said that.
That's right.
I also want to be clear that these are two different sized buildings. However, the Ludlow budget, before we made cuts, was a reduction of $4,000 from last year's budget, while the Mount Holly budget was an increase of $228,000. With these cuts, the Ludlow budget is a $90,000 decrease over last year's budget, and the Mount Holly budget is a $120,000 increase. So individual things are different in different places, but the adjustments to the budget have been, well, there may be an individual position that is different. The adjustments to the budget have come primarily for Ludlow-Mount Holly in reductions from Ludlow, not reductions from.
And I just want to agree with you, Amy. I second everything you said about Raylan. Raylan is a professional. She will help with whatever. She is a valuable resource to our families, to our kids, to our staff. All of that. And I said this to you yesterday, Raylan. This has nothing to do with how effective or important she is. It has to do with we have to make some pretty tough cuts, is what I'm hearing from the room and what we've heard ever since the budget went down a week ago.
The four of us would be delighted if you tell us we should put it on.
Sorry, and Dave's also had a hand up, so can I call in Dave and then whoever's on the board that says iPhone? Sorry.
Okay, a couple of questions. One is, can we get a dollar amount of those positions that were going to be reduced? For instance, the dollar amount of reducing Raylan and the custodian and whatever. And then what impact would that dollar amount have on the overall reduction of your budget? What percent increase? We got
specifically.
You got 4 point something percent now. What if you added the cost of their salaries? What would that change?
So if you added Raylan back 0.47, so then you would be at 4.3.
Well, I'm not talking about just Raylan. Are there more than
That's
just
what I said, you gotta tell me.
I want whoever has been impacted by reducing their salary.
It's 4.77%.
Custodian, the regular ed parent, the office manager, and the reading specialist. Right.
All of that money is basically people.
But there were other smaller tweaks, I think is what Dave is saying, so it doesn't equal
The
dollar for
TRSU
dollar.
budget went down, the TRSU contribution.
Can I, I'm not sure of the person online, sorry. Shauna.
Are we
Okay,
gonna have a
sorry, I'm
vote
like
tonight?
blinded my left eye.
Yes.
Well, I'd love it if you would, probably.
First of all, wait a minute, I didn't.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Dave.
One quick thing on one of the positions. I personally feel that administrative assistants and secretaries or whatever are the glue that hold organizations together. And to have that cut from you, I think is obscene. And I'm sorry.
Shauna. You're on mute.
Thank you. So I got in a little bit late because I had to bring my husband somewhere. And so I don't know if this was discussed, and I apologize if it has been. But when I went in to vote, the fact that the bond and the budget were both on the same page, and the amounts of the two of them were almost identical, it was even confusing to me. And I knew what was going on. And the scuttlebutt that I was hearing around town was that people just voted the budget down because they were annoyed about the bond. They thought it was a lot of money. And I've been living here for 38 years, and there has never been a school budget voted down in my 38 years that I can remember. So why can't we talk to the voters and try to just put the same budget through without the bond and see if the voters will just put the budget through without the bond?
I think that was mentioned at the beginning, though. Thank you, but yes, we did hear that at the beginning as well. Thank you. Julie, and then I'll.
Yeah, I support, similar to my colleague's position, Maria's position. I do not support cutting the personnel, even if it's not actual people, it's positions. I think if we aren't going to do the bond, that we definitely probably need the custodial support. And so I don't agree with cutting that half-time position. I don't agree with cutting the reading intervention position. I don't agree with consolidating classes because it seems we're sort of on the cusp of what a previous board thought was an appropriate guideline. And it seems to me like that there's a certain amount of fluidity from year to year in those numbers. And so, yes, next year, it might be a number that we can live with, but that doesn't seem sustainable to me. So I would support cutting the more minor items that do not impact us directly, the educational mission of the district.
Dave, sorry, I muted him again because we're running resources. You have to unmute.
You're muted, Dave.
You have to unmute.
First, I want to thank the administration for all the work they put into this in such a short time to come up with significant savings. And I think that on the combining the class, to me, it's a borderline, that we said we want 13 to 18, and this is more than 18, and otherwise it would be less than 13. So it wouldn't be perfect either way. But I think having 21 in a third, fourth grade isn't as bad as having that 21 in a first and second grade, for example. That by that age, it's more manageable. The only question might be, could you give them a para? Can you find a way to give some additional support to a larger class? I think we did that in Ludlow with at least one of the classes. We found ways to give them, when we cut down, to give them extra help. But so I think I favor that consolidation. I think I favor the idea of the building substitute. If you can't find them anyway, then we're not going to spend the money. We don't need to put it in the budget. The reduction in the capital makes good sense. The Mount Holly office manager, it's more, ideally you wouldn't want to do it. I don't know, how much do we save by doing that? Could we possibly put that back? In the TRSU budget, the reduction is helpful. And I don't know if instead of doing a decrease of 4 3/4%, it was something more like 4%. Which few things would the administration want to put back, in that order of magnitude? I think we do have to come back with something less than what we went in with last time. Even though it's not perfect. We like the budget we voted for the first time.
Lots of public hands over here, and I'll just work the background.
Can I just clarifying question of whether one of the reductions to the Ludlow-Mount Holly budget was a 79 or somewhere around there, $1,000 reduction in the TRSU budget? And if so, or what was that discussed at all? And if so, are there any reductions in the TRSU budget that impact then the
TRSU board said they want 10%.
So we made a reduction, but I'm not sure I followed all of what you said since I was muting something at the time.
Which was very distracting. Thank you.
But there was reductions made at the TRSU level that we felt we could make, which was the elimination of a staff member position because somebody resigned. So we didn't replace it. and the assessment from, and there were some other smaller things as well. We reduced the contingency for non-bargaining unit salaries, and we have a super registrar position that has been in place with a office manager position that is leaving, who also had an additional job of supervising all of the elementary school registrars, and that position is going to shift to control of the data manager at central office. So those are a variety of things, but the reduction in assessment is part of this reduction here. It's $75,913 is Ludlow's share of the reduction from the TRSU.
Thank you. Ludlow-Mount Holly.
Ludlow-Mount Holly, right.
Ludlow-Mount Holly, I'm sorry.
But yeah, whole district.
The district share is $75,913. And I know you've got other questions to answer, but if you want Cheryl to do the math on it, if I'm hearing you right, you're talking about putting back in every position that is a person. So that's 74,407 for the teacher, 22,822 for the custodial, 24,019 for the regular ed parent, 36,897 for Mount Holly office manager, 19,872 for the reduced Title I, 41,000 reduction for the 30% local piece. That's putting that back in. Yeah. So do you want her to go through and tell you if you put all of those people positions back in, what that's to your percentage?
Are you ready
while
to
you're
do that?
taking other information?
Or it could be
Yeah.
done later.
Yeah.
You have to
So
vote on-
Cheryl's gonna do some math. We'll go to Katie, right?
I'm sorry, just one more thing. While it is true that we're not asking you for a final vote tonight, if you don't leave us with what you want us to do with
Then
these
yes.
things, then we're coming back in again to start this all over again.
Yes.
Exactly where we left
Okay.
off.
Yeah.
We're running out of time
Yeah.
to try to inform people about what exactly the savings are or are not to prepare for a revote that should happen in May. So if you wait till April to decide this.
No,
Well,
we're
it
gonna
took
probably have to
months
have a
to
special
try to
meeting. Right.
explain
We're
the
gonna have
last
a
thing.
special meeting.
It didn't work.
One quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
Cheryl, can you define for us what the unfunded mandates are that you get from the state? And how much is that?
Yeah.
It's
Not really.
Huh? No? Not on me tonight. I mean, it would seem to me the public should know what the hell we're getting made to pay for that the state isn't funding.
But we're cutting the things we have control of.
I understand that. Still.
So you can't cut special ed. I had a conversation with somebody today who said, well, you always say you can't cut special ed, but if you cut it, then the feds will just give you less money. The states will give you less money. And I said, what? No, but that's the law. You can't cut it. These are kids with disabilities. They have a legal right to their services. If the family doesn't sue us for millions of dollars, then the federal government will. So you're going to pay millions of dollars to do something illegal? Like, people are talking crazy.
I'm not saying that those things would be cut, but it would be nice to know
How much?
what the state is doing to us.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
I think a simpler question would be how much of our budget do we actually have control over?
That's what he means.
Right. I
That's what I
think
mean.
that's really what you're boiling
Yeah, right.
down to.
Exactly.
So before we closed the high school, I think that number, we always asked it, it was roughly about 30% that we actually had control over. Now that we have closed the high school, I imagine, and I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine that number is less because we don't have control over tuition. That is
Right.
Right.
uncontrolled.
I think it's like 15%.
Yeah,
Right.
so we have control over very little, and that I think is what your question is really driving at. And I was trying to look on the GovX last night, to be honest, Cheryl, I couldn't find that answer, and that was what I was hoping to find. But Yeah. So while Cheryl's still doing math, Katie?
I think the kind of like bottom line point that I wanted to make is that before we talk about cutting the budget and voting on a reduced budget, would the board consider putting that same budget back out there separate from the bond with some clarification? I mean, obviously we've talked about this extensively tonight. I think unless you're a CPA or a financial analyst, you can't look at a spreadsheet full of numbers and usually make sense of it. I think can we just put a communication out there with the bottom line? Your taxes are not going up. This is what the budget is. Like, we just try voting without that confusion before we reduce the budget.
But the counter argument to that is a lot of people have said, "This, I just can't afford this," and have said specifically, if you come back with the same, it's going to feel to people like we didn't hear them, or we're just not willing to listen. And I hear a substantial number of people, even in this room, saying that they feel like at least 5% is what they're looking for.
Go ahead. I'm actually changing what I was going to say before when you said it's my turn. But to your point, the people thought the state was telling them 20% was going to happen, and it didn't.
It did.
Like, that was scary. Didn't us, didn't Mount Holly.
Right.
That was part of your presentation.
Right. But overall,
People were going into that
because of
book
the wealthy
thinking,
districts,
I'm going
they
to
said.
get walloped by the state, 20%. I can't afford more. But if you can educate them that that's not the case, that would make a huge difference. And it would.
Big easy education.
It's not to your point, I would love if this number of people came to every board meeting and heard this, because this is wonderful, and
We had
it's,
8 meetings about this.
right,
We had
I mean,
so many meetings,
right,
and Cheryl
and we
went
get
over
very
it.
few people, and it's hard, because then we don't have that guidance, and we don't have that, the thought processes and what people are thinking, and this has been lovely to have this number of people here, and if we, come back every month, we're here, we're like.
Part two, this building is full of people who love Mount Holly's children. I don't want to say more than my own child, but sometimes they're equal. Okay?
They're all my kids.
And we were tasked with COVID ending. We tried so hard, but it just wasn't enough. We had so much work to do with these kids. Social, emotional, academic. We had so much work to do. And we're doing it. We are kicking, you know what? Woo, these kids are amazing. And they're making amazing gains and progress. We've got so many new pieces of curriculum that came down to these teachers over the last 2 years. And we're rocking it. We don't like change, but we're rocking it. And we see what's happening. And you can't keep doing that if you lose the momentum of the supports that are in place. It's scary to think about how are we going to teach these kids who have all these needs and are making so much growth if we lose people who love them and are working really hard. Really, really hard. I have been teaching since 1994 when I graduated from college. There you go. I wasn't set in my ways, but I had to change so much of how I teach reading and writing. Everything I learned was like, whoa. And it was hard. And we all were faced with that reality. And it's been amazing. And it's benefiting these kids. You'll see it, maybe not tomorrow, it's coming. Like, we see it, but you can't do it with fewer people. We need, if you take away people's positions, I'm going to have to be out on recess duty 3 days a week. I can't plan the awesomeness. I can't do that if I'm outside. I love the weather, great, but this takes work, what we've been asked to do. And I can't do it if I'm on lunch duty 2 days a week and then recess duty 3 days a week because our parents are gone or we've lost people who need us. So just we're doing really good things. I would really want to keep it.
Was your hand up for me?
My hand was up,
Okay.
but Otis's hand was up and maybe somebody else over there
Okay.
for me, so if you want to go over there.
Okay, I
and
thought
then
you were
come back.
first. All right, Otis, Millicent, you. And then,
Yeah, I would just like to say that I really appreciate the budget that you guys worked so hard for to come up with. That was pretty impressive. And it's close to the 5% that I was originally talking about. I didn't realize what it entailed when it came down to that 5%. All I can say is I know that when my daughter was one level elementary, Diana Shabolo was a priceless person in that school. And so I'm sure that Ray Lynn is the same in the Mount Holly school. So I really, as far as the other positions, I'm not so sure about those, but I know that that is, in my world, having that secretary, office person in there is a vital resource for the school. And I wouldn't mind putting that back in the budget.
Delighted to put it all back in the budget.
and every penny of it.
We gave you what we
That will
thought was
pass.
the best budget.
Millicent?
Yeah, Lauren, you mentioned that the capital improvements was reduced by 65,000 because you got more realistic estimates of replacing the boiler here in Mount Holly. The roof in Ludlow. What's the plan with that? Because if you don't have a roof, you don't have a school.
I agree.
And that's not my phrase.
They're
That was
great
said when we
capacity.
had to replace the roof
Roger
here at
Wade.
this school.
I agree. However, with the messages that we received about keeping what happened with the 19% increase in spending, despite our explanation that it would not increase the base tax rate, we did not put in money for things that we were not certain we would have to do next year. So what went in was the amount of money that would have paid for the interest on the bond, or the amount that would pay for the replacement of the heating system that we knew we would have to do this year. We did not put in additional money to handle all of the other things and the list of things in the bond. If we do that,
My understanding was that there were two critical things, the boiler here and the roof there. And I know that was under the bond, but without the bond, is there a contingency plan for the roof at Ludlow?
not for next year, that would be something that you would put in the budget for the following.
Okay, so it's not as critical as the boiler.
That's my understanding
Okay.
from the information we received, was that we needed it to be certain of taking care of the furnace for next year. Be great to be able to take care of the difficulties with the roof. However, that was not as critical.
So when I mentioned my report about moving forward with, the bond failing and we looked at a 5-year plan, the roof is part of that 5-year plan. But the most important thing that I've heard since I took over my job is the boiler here at Mount Holly. I've been here with Craig for hours and hours and hours on end, waiting for it, praying for it to fire back up, or getting calls from Al in the middle of the night. So that was our main priority with the
I
bond.
just wanted to make sure that the kids down in Ludlow weren't going to have to be wearing umbrellas during school.
Well,
Well, we're not at that point yet. We're not at that
as far
point
as
yet.
we know.
But it is on the radar, right? So it is on the radar, just we feel that the boiler here carried a little bit more.
So next year, when you see a similar amount, not as an increase, but as a continuation of the capital reserve, it will be to do those things.
So not a replacement.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this. But I feel like, I didn't feel it was the right time to stick the bond forward. I thought that it was gonna scare people and do what it did. But regardless, there's repairs that need to be made. I personally feel like, sticking out to bid, maybe, in a different way. But even by doing it that way, we still need the money. So we need to start building up
that so that those, we can't wait till we become Woodstock and need a whole new high school or new schools. So I really struggle by, especially now with the formula, like it's not as significant as they made it out to be. And if we can find a better way to inform people of what we've been trying to do for months,
I would be happy to have us put, you could do the minor reduction. You'll have the $75,000 for the TRSU assessment. And if we continue to not put in the building subs, because we've been unable to do that, you can have an overall reduction of about $150,000. That's not going to get you a percentage, but you put everything back in and it won't be exactly the same budget. And I can tell you that your administration would be delighted with it. I also tell you that we do this every time. A board tells us, reduce the budget, you must reduce the budget. And Cheryl and I spend hours, and we bring it back, and you don't want to go ahead and takes to do it.
Mary,
I'm glad.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion, is if the TRSU board is requiring that, cut, why don't we just take that benefit there of the reduction in our share? And, if the building subs were going unfilled anyway, take that out. And then if I understand, you either take out like the savings that you realized with a more realistic boiler quote or whatever, or leave it in so that the money is there for all the other things we know we need to fix. Either way, but just that minor change. Can the warning be put out in such a way that explain, is there a certain way in which that warning, like the ballot item, has to be written, or can it? Oh, all right. So we can, do some outreach and
Are our meetings recorded?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can we get it shared? So that piece of Cheryl, just put Cheryl right there so she can explain it. And we can blast it all over Facebook so that
they are all on LP. I mean, my kid called me the other night, yelled at me for saying his name at town meeting. He watches them all in Maine. They're people can get to them, so they're.
The problem is nobody wants to get to them.
Yeah,
And it's hard, and you don't think about it, and then all of a sudden there's a meeting right in front of you again. I have had. I'm just gonna take my two minutes here. I've had a couple people come to me and talk about things that have already been brought up, so I'm not going to rehash any of that. One thing that hasn't been brought up that people have asked me out in the wild, if we can't get bus drivers, why are we putting transportation in our budget?
We talked about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
To give you the answer.
Yeah.
And the answer is that when we say we can't find bus drivers, we haven't been able to, and then suddenly you can. We've been in this position both here and agreement. There are no bus drivers, and then there is one. And if we pull it out of the budget, then it's not there, and it becomes the case then of if you're going to put it back in again later, then you're deficit spending, and so we can, you can take it out, but that kind of shell game is not one that I would ever recommend.
Question about the buses, because when my kids started in the town, it was under the town.
Yep.
And I never remember being like, oh no, it's almost 8:00 and there's no bus here.
Yep.
And no one's let us know. And then I'm scrambling to find transportation. But are we, when it was with the town, are we in a better position having it as back under the school budget, or
it would have been great for the town to continue?
It was great.
Why did we stop it?
Because once Black River closed and the number of students using it disappeared, the town was not willing and able to continue to provide that service.
I thought it was a legal issue with having it.
No. People partner all the time with the municipal transit. Happens all the time. Kids ride town buses. It's not an illegal.
Part of the Act 60.
Yeah,
I mean, people thought it was like a little shell, like a little loophole, like to not have the funds
That's
in
what
your
was-
budget.
I was on the board at the time.
Yeah, that was the story, but it was a good efficiency. Jamie's 100% right.
It was a town expense.
And I've actually reached back out to Marble Valley because we haven't had a bus driver, and I gave them a detailed proposal, but they're having a hard time finding drivers. It's all over the news, right? Green Mountain Transit's about to go up to $30 an hour just to get people who will drive a town or city bus. So I think if we could partner with the bus in Rutland, because it goes to Ludlow, it goes right through here.
But
That'd be great.
this is also something
can't
that the
beat
board can say, we think you should remove that. Again,
Please don't do that. That's one kid. If one kid moves out of town, one family, because they can't get to work because there's no bus, or if one family doesn't move in, that's what we're talking about. The cost of that bus service is like 20 grand.
I also think that parents have expressed that that's a hardship. So
Already?
take away the possibility of that.
Oh, people are.
I was not advocating for it. I'm
Just wanted to
saying that people have asked me about
Yeah,
it.
it's a
and
great
I'm
question.
gonna voice the question.
We talked about it
It's a
because
great
it's a reasonable thing to consider.
And it's great you asked it because people need to know why not that.
Yeah. Dave has this.
Sorry, Dave, go ahead. You're on mute. Hit the space bar, Dave.
Sorry, I'm on vacation using a tablet instead of a computer. Having heard all the discussion back and forth, I do think that so many of the voters expect us to come with some cuts, that if we don't come with a significant number, that will probably, a good chance we would lose again. I guess what I would ask the administration is if instead of doing a 4.75% cut, they did 3.75%, right? To prioritize which things on their list they might put back and come back to it with something like that at our next meeting. Similarly, we sort of overlapped into the discussion of the bond. I agree that they need to be separate, but I would also think that, that we don't want to have any new bond on the same ballot as I think we all probably agree with that. But in the meantime, I would ask Eric and Todd to start looking and saying which are the highest priorities? What would they come to with a smaller number? 5, 6, 7, and not to do it at the same time, but for us to be considering at a meeting in a month or two.
So can I? Yeah, so I think we've had a lot of discussion. I think, thank you. I don't know, maybe I'm not speaking for all of us, but I think what I'm hearing and what I'm speaking for is that we have to have another meeting anyways. I think that meeting should be after the TRSU meeting because we don't really know what's going to happen there officially. We reconvene a special meeting shortly thereafter. In the meantime, you want a direction. I think we've heard that the direction should be to hopefully keep the TRSU cuts. People, positions, put back in as appropriate and necessary. I don't know that we agreed to all of them. I'm not sure about the regular ed pair if there's not a need, but we moved them to special ed. I don't know how that would pan out. And then see what that does with the more finessed numbers of maintenance projects and the little other things that we know pop up between here and there.
I think Cheryl could probably tell you right now, if you put back in the people positions here, what that percentage would be.
2% decrease. 2%.
Does that, did you add back the non-unit increase? Did you go back to 4.7%? That doesn't include the increase for the non-unit employees.
Yeah, I did not put back in the reduction in contingency. If I believe you would have put back in the 1.0 FTE teacher, the 0.5 custodial, the 0.5 regular ed para, and the 0.5 office manager, and the reduction of the Title I at LES. Those are the things that if we put those back in, instead of a 4.7% decrease, we have a 2% decrease.
2%, 2.7.
2%. 2.0. And I want to say this out loud. When we vote on a budget, we're voting on a bottom line.
Yep.
And I would think if we did that, if we voted to go forward with that at our next meeting, we're voting on a bottom line, and I think it's important to honor the fact that we've had this discussion and people see the value in the places that we can cut because it's not against the law with special ed or whatever, that we honor those positions and they stay and they don't get manipulated for other things. Am I not being clear? Sorry.
Sorry, when you say manipulated for other things.
Well, I guess because I know that sometimes with a budget, we vote on that bottom line.
Yeah.
And I would hate for this big discussion to have happened and for us to say we really value these positions. They are positions and not people to us, unfortunately. They are positions. And that then in 6 or 8 months we decide, oh, something else needs to happen and we're going to take this out because we're still within the bottom line. That's all I'm trying to, I think we really need to honor this.
From our position, if we've had a discussion about specific items, we're not going to make any changes to anything that has been specifically discussed. Beyond that, it is not the job of the board to make the particular decisions about who gets put in what classroom where and how those things are managed.
Yeah.
But it is part of why I would be really uncomfortable with the come back to us with a 3.5%, because I'm going to bring these two, because that's what there is to bring. And the backing into a budget, if you tell us, bring us a budget that is at this percentage decrease, I'm comfortable doing that if you tell us, and then we'll take whatever you give us. If you want to make decisions about what you think is most important to cut at that number, then you need to tell us what it is, not expect that we will do that. We've told you, here's what we think.
Right.
We think all of these things should be in there. We don't think we should cut any of these things. And if we need to do a significant reduction, these are the things we think should reduce. I would be happy to put all of the people back in and go forward with a 2% reduction.
So for tonight, I think we are at a place where we can sort of table this with a 2% reduction, have a special meeting after the TRSU meeting, make sure that we have a final go around, and then we can move forward tonight. Julie?
I would just like to, I would advocate for bringing the annual salary increase of the non-union employees back to whatever was consistent with the union increases, because just because someone in the community is in a position that's not represented by a union, it doesn't mean that their groceries are any less expensive. So, I believe you said that was a modest.
It's $5,000
reduction. So I would.
But that'll take it below. That will mean the reduction won't be 2%. It'll be 1%.
To me, the percentage, it doesn't mean anything. I'm not an education expert. You folks are the ones in charge of this, and I would like a decision to be more based on sort of operational need and not just an arbitrary percentage.
Sounds great.
Dave?
Try to put things in perspective. The fact that there was so many people confused for whatever reason at the voting on the budget makes it even more appropriate for us to consider what Katie talked about. It's not worrying about presenting the budget as it was. Again, 20 long years ago, first time I think on the board, we had our budget voted down 4 times, maybe 5.
I think it was 5, but
5 times.
regardless, it was a lot.
So it doesn't mean penny the sky is falling just because that happens. And the fact that it was not understood well enough, it's incumbent upon us to try to do a better job at doing that. I'm not throwing stones at anybody. It was, so anyway,
And I think we've had 20-ish people here tonight who can go out and spread our, message.
Nothing bad happens if we vote it down.
If you vote it down, then you will have to come back and put it forwards again. And it, in all likelihood, the next time you go forwards for it may well take you into the next fiscal year. It's not the end of the world, but it makes things complicated.
Right.
It will make Cheryl's life very complicated. It will make my life complicated. I won't be here.
From a tax standpoint, they have to, people who have to send us 2 bills.
I understand. I understand it's complicated, but it's something.
It is certainly.
And I'm just, this is, with the new formula, like, it's important that we take advantage of it while we can. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
No, I don't.
When the year's gonna be over and.
Yeah, and then we're gonna be stuck with.
It's like it's on sale right now. To do it now. I'm not buying it, it's on sale. All right, I've seen a couple hands and I'm just wanting to honor our time because it is almost 8:30. 1 Mills, 2, and then 3 Otis. Oh, and somebody back here, Craig, 4, and then.
I might have forgotten what I was going to say as we were watching you plan that out.
Right.
No, I didn't. That was a million years ago. Sorry, Katie.
Millicent and then Otis.
Yeah, I would just like to caution the board on a couple of things. Number one, when you're representing a budget, communicate to them what percentage of the budget you have no control over and what percentage you do have control over. And I think people will have a better feel for what you're having to deal with if they know that this is mandated federally or state, and we can't do anything about it, so we have to do this. So this budget item can't be played with. And the other thing was, if you're reconsidering doing a bond issue again, wait at least 6 months.
We haven't even yet. Yeah. Otis?
I just want to say that 1/3 of the budgets in the state of Vermont got voted down. I don't think the towns and the people here were that confused on the bond or the budget. So I would recommend more of a substantial cut than 2 less, because I don't think it'll go through.
Go ahead. I remember what I was going to say, but I just want to say, I do think they were confused because the state said it's going to be 20% coming at you regardless of what your town budget is. We're going to hit you with 20%. People believed that, and it was what we heard. So I do think they misunderstood, and I misunderstood. I mean, that's what they said was going to happen to us, and everybody said, "Oh, 20% is too much." Aside from that, what I was going to say, I don't know, I'm worried about the time that you're taking. I know you're talking about positions and not people, but they are people, and their lives are hanging in the balance, not knowing what's going to happen to them or if they should move on somewhere else, and you might lose them forever. They could just make that decision to cut ties, right? So don't take too long to table things and make new decisions and figure it out.
Right. I was going to say what you just said, Darcy, about people. This is incredibly stressful.
Yes.
So letting this hang out in uncertain territory is not good. And I also, the other element of time here is the next TRSU meeting is not till the 28th. I get what you're saying about that. You don't have a solid number yet. We offered 2% cuts. They said 8 to 10. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I don't see the TRSU board moving that meeting up.
That's going to happen on the 28th.
Yes, and so
And they're not going to put
are
anything
you going
back
to
in.
meet
It might
on
go
the
down.
same night or right after them or the next day? That's a Thursday.
I think
So
we
you're
have
going to
figure
go,
that out.
you're going to go, you're probably not on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday. So we're talking March is gone. And look how long we tried to help people understand what just happened. Like months and months and months and months and months. And people were still either dissatisfied, confused, or, you name it. You've heard every perspective out there just in this room tonight. So we are going to run out of time. We don't want to be going past the end of this fiscal year. That's not.
Maria. I move that we discuss this at the special meeting because we have a lot of other things to discuss on the agenda and not taking more questions to the end.
And do you feel like you have a guidance? Ish.
At this point, I don't know whether you are asking us to move forward. We'd like to put information out for other people to look at. Are you asking us to put out the numbers with these people positions put back in? Is that what
Yes.
the board is saying?
I think-
I hear that, right? Making a motion would be great.
All right, go Dave, go.
Make a motion that we move forward with those folks back in the budget.
So a
Including the
2%
salary
cut.
line.
Right. That's a 2% cut.
Well, it's going to be under,
Yeah.
putting the contingency.
Which I agree.
So what we're leaving out, just so that I'm clear.
Yeah.
We're leaving out the 2 building subs. We are still reducing the capital improvement by 65,000. We are having the reduction from the TRSU assessment, which you don't have control over, it's just going to happen. And the other 4,000 in miscellaneous benefit adjustments. Those are the things that we're cutting. And everything else we're putting back in. And we will write that up. We'll put that in the folder for people to look at. And then you're going to have an additional meeting to talk about it. Is that where we are? That feels like guidance.
And that does not include the teacher.
Doesn't include any of the people.
Right, well, no, I'm asking specifically the teacher who's resigned, that would include or not include filling that position.
That, we did not pull that out.
Okay.
We pulled the reduce, yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to be
And I
clear.
think,
Okay,
If you're putting this money back in, then we've covered for that.
I think this is a small number, but I think the general paragraph was also one that you.
That's in here.
You said that one.
Yeah, that one's going back in. It's all right.
No, but I thought that was cut. To general.
Any more discussion?
We're putting all the people back.
Sounded to me like that's the teachers.
Yeah.
okay, so Dave made a motion, did we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, Maria, just because I know Amber can hear. Any other discussion?
Dave has the same.
Dave, sorry.
Okay, yeah, I would vote against this motion because I think we need to make a cut somewhat larger than 2%, even if it's smaller than the 4 3/4. I think that we should continue to follow the policy of class size and combine the 3rd and 4th grade sections into one class in Mount Holly. As I understand that reduction is not part of the 2%. Is that right?
Yeah.
7.
Mm-hmm.
We're adding it back.
He's saying,
Yeah.
The motion as it is, the motion that was seconded by Maria, is to go forward adding the position back in.
Yep.
That were originally taken out. And so that is the motion that we are voting on at the moment.
I think Dave is saying.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to put it.
Okay.
All right, so do you want to be more clear about your motion? Okay, we're good. All right. All those in favor of Dave's motion to have Cheryl together a budget that puts back in the positions as we have outlined. All those in favor? Anybody opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so the ayes have it. Because we're this way, we need to do a roll call, right?
Oh, yes, you do.
All right. Julie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Maria? Jamie?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
Thank you. All right, so roll call. What's that? I don't have yeah, darn. Okay.
The board chair votes in case of the time, otherwise.
Okay, so moving along, we will meet back up for a date at the end.
Thank you.
New business. We do need to reorganize. And what that looks like is we would need to nominate
Right.
Sorry, we need to, I was looking for it. It's
It's on the
down
back.
way further. I knew it was there, but I thought it was at the top of the page. Sorry. All right. So we need to nominate for a board vice chair. Thank you all. Thank you. Spread our message.
Come back.
Right. Do we have anybody who wants to nominate a vice chair? To do it.
Well, what are the duties of the vice chair?
Take over in the event that the chair is not available. You are invited to come to the agenda setting meetings that they have with the superintendent, although most of the time the vice chair doesn't attend those, but you are invited as you can. Yeah, you are allowed to be part of that. And in the event of you are the runner-up, right? In the event that the chair cannot fulfill her duties, that becomes the vice chair's job to take over.
Who's the vice
Kelly
chair?
can tell you, she's currently the vice chair.
Currently the
How
vice chair.
challenging has that been for you, Kelly?
No, I was. I guess I currently am still.
You will.
I'm not sure I can do it. Do any of my colleagues have any interest in that position? Because there's another position that I was thinking I would do, and so I just life-wise.
You want to table it and come back?
Yes, let's table that.
So the next would be a board clerk. That person communicates with Amber when necessary, but that's a pretty low stakes hold.
Mr. Clerk?
Yes.
It was Judy. Judy.
Signing a few documents. Couple times a year.
That is a quite low position. But somebody's got to.
Right. Do we have? Okay, perfect. So I will go ahead and nominate Maria for the board clerk. Are there any other nominations? Or somebody has to second it, sorry. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for board clerk? All right, all those in favor of Maria being the board clerk? Anybody opposed to Maria being the board clerk? All right. Adopt our code of ethics agreement.
It's the same as it is every year.
Right.
That what we ask for is that you take the vote, that you are all agreeing to uphold it, and then we pass this around and ask that everybody signs it. And that's in your packet. It's the same as it's been every year.
Yes.
I move that we adopt.
All right. Is there any discussion about the code of ethics? Does it need to be read?
Well, doesn't happen.
It doesn't have.
We all sign.
Can I?
But you all need to have read it since you're going to sign it.
Oh, here it is. Can I highlight it?
You could highlight it.
So we will act within the scope of our official role. We'll recognize our responsibility. We will act as a member of the board and not assume individual authority. We will give no directions as an individual to any school administrator or employee, public or private.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one. That everybody
We give
needs to
no
hear
directives.
and remember.
Correct.
As an individual, you have no authority. The board is in charge of things, not you.
We should avoid making commitments that may compromise the decision-making ability of the board and the administrators. We will uphold the highest ethical standards and not receive anything of value by contract or otherwise from the school district or supervisory union unless it is received as a result of a contract accepted after public bid, in public recognition of service or achievement, as a board stipend, reimbursement, or expense allowed. Nobody has ever rushed my door with gifts for doing this. So, not solicit or receive directly or indirectly any gift. Agree to recuse or remove myself from board deliberation and votes when necessary to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest. Not agree to the hiring of a superintendent, principal, or teacher already under contract with another school district. Respect my peers, constituents, and the confidentiality. Voice my opinions respectfully and treat others with respect. Maintain confidentiality. Attend regular board meetings insofar as possible. And agree to abide by the principles outlined in this code of ethics and will do everything in my power to work as a productive member of the leadership team.
So,
All right, so
Everybody's.
we've motioned, we've seconded, we've read. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of adopting the code of ethics?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, it is unanimous, so we don't need to do a roll call.
So I've got a sheet. We're going to pass it around
Sign
to the
it.
5 people here.
Okay.
Dave, if you get a chance, come into central office and sign.
Policies that are listed, there are 7 of them. They are.
Wait, you've got more.
We have more.
Your board is not.
Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped a page. All right, meeting date and time and venue. Currently, we are doing every other month in the 2 different towns, 6 o'clock, the second Wednesday of every month.
I move that we continue our past practice.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Oh, and that we continue to, sorry, maybe I'm too late, continue to offer the Zoom option,
Yes,
right?
yes, I think, yeah.
I think that we continue as same. We just move that.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody opposed? Perfect. Adoption of Robert's Rules of Order for small boards. We need a motion to do
We
that.
have an issue.
Yeah, Julie's name's written twice. Can I
Oh.
cross it off? Initial
Yes,
it later?
please. I'm so sorry. I didn't catch
Okay,
that.
I didn't.
All right, so adoption of Robert's Rules of Order for small boards.
So moved.
Seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Appoint a warrant signer. Dave is, no. Jamie
So
said.
I was, but I was able to do it every other week when I was up doing a work from home, and I can no longer do that unless you want me to sign here. That's just hard.
It generally is every 2 weeks.
Right. So is there anybody who can go to the central office every other week to sign those?
And there's a,
Is it possible to have an alternate?
yes.
Yes. We should have somebody.
I think
Paul is out.
yeah.
But you need 2 people.
Right. I mean, if Jamie could do it once a month, could somebody else do it once a month?
Yeah.
So you can't do it enough. Okay.
And we alternate with someone, just because I'm not always here.
Julie or Dave, can you alternate with Maria?
Yeah, I'm away right now, but we could probably work out a schedule where I alternate. My only other question is, as we go down and do assignments, can some of them wait until we appoint 2 more members?
Yeah, I think that
Yes,
would be.
some of them
yeah.
can.
Or can we consider some of these appointments temporary, and after we get 2 more members, and then we go back and revisit?
That's the better solution, because sometimes it takes a while for there to be people who step up, and you don't want to not have people signing the warrants.
So seems like we have volunteers. We need a motion to have Maria and Dave share the duties.
So made.
Thank you. And a second? A second. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Conrad. Okay, so ayes have it. We need to appoint a recording secretary. That is Amber?
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion for that.
We'll all motion for Amber to continue doing it. Somebody want to second it officially?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion about Amber continuing? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. So TRSU board, usually we have, is it the chair?
We have 3 people. It is almost always
The chair
it's
and
the chair, and then 2 additional people. And Julie's been an alternate.
Yes,
I've been on.
that's the one I would
I
like.
haven't made a lot of games.
Someone can nominate me, please.
I will nominate Julie.
As the chief member?
Yeah. And you be the alternate?
Well, we
We
have
need
to have
3
2
people.
and an alternate.
Oh, you need 3 people.
Well, me as
You,
chair.
Julie, and 1 other person.
Right.
Then an alternate.
Right.
So Dave, are you asking to still stay on?
Okay, so Julie and Dave would be the TRSU members. We'll vote on that first. Somebody want to make a motion?
So made.
A seconded? Any discussion? And all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay.
Great.
And then we need an alternate if Dave or Julie cannot be there.
Or you?
Or me, right? Anybody want to nominate or volunteer?
I guess I'll give you the alternate.
Okay.
Dave,
Please
are
don't make me
you,
go very often.
All right. Dave, you're breaking up and we can't hear you at all.
I didn't hear it. Did someone volunteer to be an alternate?
I think Jamie did.
You did.
Okay, fine.
All right, so Jamie will be motion to have Jamie be the alternate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Alternate, RBTC board.
that was Paul.
That was Paul.
And Godfar is waiting to know who's going to replace him for the RVT.
When does it meet?
They meet once a month. I don't remember it. I think it's it is an evening in Springfield. The TRSU sends 1 rep from Green Mountain and 1 rep from Ludlow.
I mean,
And the meetings don't conflict with the other TRSU board meetings. I do not remember exactly what it is. I think it's a Tuesday.
I mean, I would feel guilty not doing it, since how I work kind of across the street.
Oh,
If you're volunteering to do that, and it turns out that the day is one that you can't do, then we've got somebody in place until somebody else comes up.
Okay.
You can take Dave's advice and make it.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe I can zoom in or something from.
You can.
Yeah, okay, that would be easier for me. So does somebody want to make a motion for me
So
to
made.
do that? And
Maria second. Maria second.
thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed to me? All right.
Can we table the next ones? Because I don't think D or E are
Right, they're not an
pressing.
issue at the moment, right?
So can
They
we
will
wait
be an issue in the fall, but you
Fall,
can wait
but
for
for the new members?
So can we make sure that that gets on the agenda
Yeah,
for,
for next month.
right, April?
I would like to ask for the committee assignments, most of which you can wait on as well. However, the policy committee is scheduled to meet again on Monday, and your two policy committee members were Judy and Paul. So if no one is going to be there, you will have no representation at the policy committee for Ludlow-Mount. And we may wind up without a quorum if half of the people who are supposed to be on it aren't there. So I would request that at least one person agree to temporarily be on it who could come on Monday at 6:00.
So
That would be
Jamie-
great.
All right, so is there a second person who can do it temporarily?
We're meeting on the 18th. It usually meets once a month. It never meets more often than once a month. Sometimes it's less than once a month, usually on a Monday.
18th, 6 o'clock.
On the 18th.
meeting at 6?
At 6. Yeah.
Okay. And
It's at central office, at the Roost. It's the building right across, it's a long, narrow building across the driveway from central.
All right, so we have one person now volunteering.
And then we'll put that back on the agenda.
Yeah, for April as well. Okay, so all those in favor of Jamie filling in for at least one meeting?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, perfect. Bargaining, we don't need. Transportation committee, food service, superintendent evaluation, and tuition, all can wait, correct, for April. Thank you.
Ellie, it looks like RBTC is first Wednesday. Check the website.
RBTC is first Wednesday. Okay.
I'm not available on Wednesdays.
I know. Did you have something to say, Dave?
The next category, I was going to ask you if we can table the policies.
Well, I think, we gotta finish this little piece here. Bank selection.
Community, we were pitched by people, but they gotta fall through. Came back, so.
Okay, so you're looking for a motion to approve Community Bank as our bank of record?
So made.
Choice.
More than record.
Record, choice, all right. Did Maria second it?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor of using Community Bank?
Aye.
Anybody opposed to using Community Bank? Okay. Newspaper of record.
You use, Vermont Journal, so we have to have a printed record.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got up to $14 per column inch. They got up 50 cents per column inch for the last 3 years.
I think it's the best of the best, yeah. All right, so do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Maria. All right, there's plenty to call you Courtney tonight for some reason. Another board member that was here. No, Charity's looking at me like, huh?
No, I'm fine. Hey, thank you for texting.
Oh. So we need approval to use the journal. Anybody opposed? My brain is falling out of my head. I'm sorry. It's way past my bedtime. And okay, that's it on it. So then we can go back to policies. I was gonna say, Dave, I love your idea of tabling them, but they are first reads.
You don't need to.
So let's just say they're first reads and we'll bring them back for adoption next time if needed. TRSU is going to meet again to look at them also.
And if anybody sees anything they want to suggest to the policy committee that's going to meet on Monday, send us.
Which does bring us
the public comments.
Does bring us to the continuing improvement plan presentation.
Yeah, so this will take us about 40 minutes, half an hour. How long does it?
No, I don't think it will take that.
How long?
You can speed through.
We
We
can
can
speed
speed through, and there's resources in the deck, and this is just the first.
So the intent with this is to give the overview of it, and then we're bringing it back to you, not to go into detail next week, but to ask for approval. The continuing improvement plans are something we do every year. During COVID, it was something that was connected to our recovery plan, and we were not directed to bring it for approval to the board. We'd make it available, we'd tell you when it was ready, but we are now being told this year that the boards must give formal approval to the plan. We want that to be done before May because it is how we get our Title I money that pays for some of our wonderful people. And we don't want you to be having to hear it, try to ask questions about it all at once. So it will not take very long.
Thank you guys for coming.
But it's important, it would be important for you to see it.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm not a public speaker. I talk to children because that's where my comfort level is. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
All right.
Lauren, can I share my screen with you? Permission, this computer is not going to last.
Right? I mean, we'll go as quick as we can. It's important to have it.
Yeah, and we don't usually go this long, but I think it was all valid and important stuff.
I would agree.
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to share that the first 15 slides, I was going to go over an overview, which is the same overview that was presented at the TRSU meeting, which talks a lot about the intricacies of the SIP process and of the continuous improvement process itself. As Lauren said, this is the proposal for you to just hear and share thoughts and feedback on. We'll again share it with you for approval in April. So given the time, the slides are there. There are extensive notes if you want to learn more about that, as well as links including to the integrated field review and the snapshot that give you an overview of what informs the SIP. If that's okay, given the time, we just want to go straight into the proposal for the theory of action and the goals for each of the two buildings.
And
Does that sound okay
was
to everybody?
yeah, absolutely, I think. And it was recorded. If people really want to see what you said to TRSU, we could go back and do that.
So you can see the whole thing.
Right.
If you have any questions, please just reach out.
Yeah, Devin.
Yep, absolutely. So my bedtime reminder just went off on my watch. And then it's time to go to
Mine
bed.
too.
Kelly.
So Kelly and I are on the same page. So as Emma said, we build a continuous improvement plan each year. We look at the school data and we do a theory of action or a theory of improvement. And so we looked at academic proficiency in both ELA and math. Ludlow's goals or theory of improvement are in alignment with the district, with the TRSU goals. So if Ludlow Elementary School continues to implement a structured literacy instructional approach that emphasizes explicit and systematic teaching of reading skills, language comprehension, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness. And if Ludlow Elementary School continues to regularly review data and make adjustments to instruction, then the students in Ludlow will improve their reading achievement. Similarly, in math, if we use a structured approach, looking for formative assessments as well as skill development, LES will continue to review data. We should see instructional improvements in math. For safe and healthy schools, those are three categories, by the way, that we're supposed to have an academic goal as well as a social emotional goal. That's something that the state indicates that we have to have at minimum. So we have 2 academic and 1 in safe and healthy schools. So if all educators act on the belief that all students can achieve high standards, as a result of
effective teaching and foster inclusive learning environments for all students, that students will feel a sense of belonging, trust, and safety, and their academic outcomes will improve. So our goals are, by the end of 2026, LES will improve the number of students in grades 3 through 6 demonstrating proficiency on the BTCAP ELA assessment as measured by growing the percent proficient by at least 20 percentage points at the building aggregate level. And in math, improve the number of students in grade 3 through 6 demonstrating proficiency on the BTCAP math assessment, measured by growing math proficiency by at least 20 percentage points. And then for our social emotional goal, we have no tool to measure our social emotional learning within the schools. So the goal is to evaluate, choose, and implement a screener. And LES will collect baseline data. Students will show growth in the sense of belonging, trust, and safety based on the screener that we find, and then do a baseline and move that forward. So that's my in a nutshell.
Any questions on LES? Okay, I'll jump right into Mount Holly. So you're going to see some similar language because we are also in alignment with the GRSU improvement plan. And Deb and I work really closely together with Lauren and Emma and Julie. And so we're thinking about a lot of the critical issues in ways that are similar. Not much difference in terms of the wording there, in terms of our theory of improvement for ELA, math, and social emotional learning. I think rather than read all that, unless anybody wants any clarification, you want to take a minute and just look at that, or raise your hand if you want me to read it all. Thinking nobody's raising their hand.
I just have a question about the date. I know, sorry. I hesitate to do this, but.
Ask the question.
So it's a 2-year plan.
Yes.
I thought this was an annual report.
It is.
We revise it every year. So the 24, I had a kind of similar question at the beginning of the process. So 2024, 25 is the year that's coming up, right? It's fall of 24, 25. So our goals are the same to improve student performance in all of these areas by next spring. And then again, 25, 26. But we will be, not just annually, we will be constantly, probably every 6 to 8 weeks, revising our theory of improvement, our root cause analysis, our analysis of the data. And it's a living
It
document.
makes sense to set multiple year goals and then
Right.
set interim goals, which are essentially for the year, and then you go in and you review.
We want to set these benchmarks to make real clear with ourselves as leaders and with our staff. We're raising the bar. We're doing it steadily.
Just to also just address your question too, Cheryl, that the education quality standards, which are set by the Vermont Agency of Education, require the continuous improvement plan to be submitted every year. Because of COVID and recovery, as Lauren said, that was put on hold, and now the process is starting again. It's a 2-year cycle with the goals being set that way, but they are revised every year and looked at pretty consistently around progress monitoring of how the change ideas are actually affecting the goals. So it really is perceived as a model improvement science around how to really help improve schools in a strategic way.
So for the goals, so here you're going to see.
Now my computer's not answering this line. It froze.
It's tired too.
I really didn't.
I'm sorry. I'm so
Now you're We're almost done. We're
All right, we're almost there. Okay, so here, while Ludlow School and Mount Holly School went through a very similar and rigorous and extensive process of reviewing our data, figuring out what it means, what do we need to do, and how do we arrive at goals that are both measurable and achievable, but not too high, not too low, but just right goals. we went through a process with my leadership team, with our entire faculty, and similar to the way Ludlow really tried to involve our whole team. And again, of course, with Julie and each other and our goal is by June 2025, Mount Holly School will improve the number of students in grades K through 6 demonstrating proficiency in reading achievement to at least 65%. That's for next spring. We're currently at about 60% proficiency, which we're not satisfied. We want to raise that. And then by the following June 2026, we're going to hit that target of 70% proficiency. So that means proficient or above on the BT, 3 through 6 test. Just a really brief, VTCAP is a criterion reference exam, and it's measuring based on a standard. If third graders are reading on grade level, these are the standards that are specifically articulated, and are they making it or not? If they get a 3 or a 4, they're making it. If they're not, if they're at a 2, they're approaching that, but they're not there. They're 1, they're really struggling more and are further behind. We also do MAPS testing, and we are going to use multiple measures, including MAPS. We do that 3 times a year. Unfortunately, VCAP is only once a year. That is a norm reference exam, meaning about 10 million kids across the United States take this exam, but it gives you a percentile. So if you're at 50% at the percentile rate, then you're doing better than 49% of the kids. If you're at the 99th percentile, you're doing better than 98. But the problem is, as Lauren has so articulately explained, if everybody in America can't read at 3rd grade, then being average isn't very good, right? Okay, so we're using multiple measures, but they tell us different things. All right, so math, we're currently at, and I should say, we're at 60%, the state's at 50. Statewide average is 50 for reading. And math, we're gonna hit 60% next spring and 65% in 2026. We're currently at 55%. Really not happy about that. Unfortunately, the number in the state of Vermont is 35%. If you aggregate the 3 through 6 kids who can do math on grade, according to the standard. So we're doing 20% better, but not good enough. And social emotional, we too don't have the kind of screener that we really want. We do collect climate data every year, and we have been doing that for years, and so we can see trends on how kids and families and staff are feeling. Are they safe? Do they feel belonging? All of that. But we need more granular level details so that we can improve in those areas better as well. I think that's it. Question?
What are the readings again?
Statewide?
Austin State.
State is 50%. On Holly's at 60%. Math.
Literacy.
Yeah, literacy, reading, writing. All of, I said reading, but it's really reading.
Speaking and listening.
Speaking and listening.
What's the other?
That's a good point.
What's the math?
Math statewide average is 35%, and we're at 55%.
I think this is important to talk about if we can.
And then in like a year or two after that, we want to, and 5%, by the way, it's really interesting. Different people in different schools kind of looked at our data, and we're at different places in different measures. But the growth rate of 20% that Deb articulated is almost mathematically identical to the 5% incremental improvement that I'm striving for in achievement. It's almost like synonymous.
Our N size is so small.
Yeah.
That, we can truly look at which kids are struggling and target their instruction to help them improve, to help us meet those gains. Because in certain classes, one child is 15%.
Yeah.
So
one kid would be detected.
100%. So when we think about the men side, you know.
Or wrap it up. We're just so excited about this process and the team we have, and what Darcy said is so true. People are getting it. They're understanding the science of literacy, the science of math. They're getting the science of learning, of neuroscience, and how we learn. It's really inspiring.
And this is what we like to talk about.
Not
So
very.
multiply your meetings, or it's about teaching and learning. That's what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
We almost never get to it because it becomes the thing we do at the end when everybody's.
And the last thing I want to say is thank you to have a board like you. It's so important, and I'm so grateful. And I've been here 20 years because we always have a board like this in Ludlow-Mount. And they don't have that interest. Yet, we're getting it. We're going to get it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Of course. I have one question, just something that just came.
Yeah.
The children that do struggle against that.
Yeah.
What happens? Do we push them through, or do they stay back until they improve to get pushed through?
We don't retain generally, although we have done that.
That's what I want.
All of the research that I think is credible is not supportive of the idea of retention for a few reasons. And we won't go into a lot of detail, but I can talk to you more one-on-one too.
Yeah.
But it really is damaging. Kids, when they stay back, they feel like they fail. And often families, they're just not supportive of that, and then it comes as a really
Because I just
negative
kind
thing.
of wonder if sometimes they kind of get lost in the sauce when they.
Well, no.
We don't pretend that kids have learned things when they haven't.
No.
If they haven't mastered something one year, they
Right,
didn't
and I'm
master
not
it.
just saying that not because of this. My kids went through this school, and they're very bright. They've got great jobs.
Yeah.
The teachers did a wonderful job with it.
But the alternative to retention is basically, in a nutshell, we meet all kids where they are, and if they're lagging in terms of skills, then we double down on the interventions, on the services, on the strategies that we use. It's called multi-layered systems of support. It's a fancy word, but it's really like, if it's not working, don't just do it louder in the same way again. Like, didn't you hear me? 2 + 2 is 4. No, it's like, how do we do it differently?
And we
How
also
do
don't say you didn't learn it last year, so we're going to forget about it and never pick it up
Yes.
to you again.
Sure.
That's right.
I mean, you're going to learn how to. You can't fix it now. You're going to learn how to fix it.
That's
We're
right.
gonna get to
And
that
if we
point.
didn't get through the first time, we'd do it 2 or 3 more times until we get it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to know why she said that. Shrugging kids.
Great
Yeah,
question.
kind of popped into my head.
And Jamie also has a question.
No, my question is just like, I have other like things I want to like just ask and like talk about, and like, how do you bring that stuff up?
So,
You know, like-
Like, what?
You know,
Like, give us an example.
So we're all worried about the budget, and we've got them restructuring stuff, and you know, trying to. Like if I wanted to bring up like, well, let's talk about what if we took in Andover kids? How do I get that?
So you tell your board chair that you want it on the agenda, and actually, we're about to get to item 14 here, which says set next meeting date and agenda.
Okay, so then
So you
that's-
can say, I'd like to talk about those issues. in the next meeting.
So, nice segue. Next meeting, that is exactly what's next. We didn't approve policies, public comment, but I think most of the public bailed on us.
I work here. I gotta stay here.
I'll lock up now. You go ahead.
No, I already got the gyms all done.
All right, next
Seriously, I'll
meeting
be here.
is
I got it.
April
No,
10th.
I'm
It
here.
would be in Ludlow and on Zoom. That is
April 10th.
April 10th, which is also the week of vacation.
Yes, I will be attending by Zoom because
I will not be hopefully in the state.
No,
I'm
so
not
do
sure.
we have a quorum?
That's what I'm wondering. Should we change the date?
I will be.
Okay. It sounds like a lot of people are going to be out of town.
But consume.
So good soon, but. Yeah.
Special meeting after tonight.
You'll be in good company.
So if, that's what I was gonna propose. If we did it the week before, had our regular meeting, we could also tackle the budget and knock it all out in one meeting.
And do it a week
If
sooner.
we
That's
zip
great.
it, if we zip it in, kill two birds with one stone. And
April 3rd.
Hell yeah.
does that work for people? I mean, apparently it's not going to work for me if I have to go see Scott Farrar, but I can skip Scott and come here.
You can live with that.
Yes.
At the moment, we do not have anything scheduled for the.
And that'll be right after the TRSU.
Right, which will help us.
If you cannot make it, if you can't make it, we're not doing it. Because if you're not here.
You're important. Yeah. Do it without me.
Nope.
Could we do another night that week?
Wait, Cheryl can't do it? You can't do it?
The second?
The second? What about the second?
Yeah,
We're not
Tuesday.
priority, come on.
When does the Mount Holly Select Board meet? Is that?
To answer your question on the emergency.
It was in the hospital with a spider bite.
Does the board have questions?
So the third is for free, what about the second?
All right, so
When
let's
does
make
Mount
it.
Holly Select Board?
That
It's a
is
Tuesday.
Tuesdays, but I'm not sure when.
Which one does?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
Maybe Dave knows.
Because we want to be able to, we're on.
But that wouldn't impact though what, in fact, we wouldn't know what. Or until after.
The day of their meeting, Tuesday, because we're running out of time. We don't have a luxury of time. Like, we need to get this vote in May.
Monday works for me, the first.
April Fools. The chit chat says,
They met tonight this month, because they had to change it, because somebody had some family. But they don't normally meet on there. And I finished.
I don't,
You tell.
7th, 1st, 2nd. I don't see,
Pretty sure it's a
If
Tuesday.
the Mount
so we
Holly
can-
Select Board meets regularly on the second Tuesday of every month.
Second
So
Tuesday.
great,
All right, so
we're fine.
first Tuesday's
Okay.
good. Awesome.
So the second.
so we are meeting, our next meeting will be not our usual time. It will be the 2nd of April. We will tackle the budget as we discussed tonight, as well as our regular agenda items, which will include the policy, or sorry, not the policies, but the committee assignments as necessary, and
Will
Still need a vice
talk
chair.
about,
oh, right.
will we talk about potential board, like, if some people indicate they're interested, would that
Yes.
happen
Yeah.
at that meeting?
And we will also discuss the policy about retiring and resignation of teachers versus class size, rating class size.
Sorry, you went to retirement.
Well, yeah, no, because that's the way I wrote it.
Yeah.
But the right,
Class size.
yes, class sizes. And Julie, what were you just saying? It fell out of my head.
If we're gonna be, if we might get some interest from people who want
Right.
to serve,
If they propose a letter,
they,
do we have?
do they come? How does that
So
work?
the process for that is, it's someone will send a letter to the board chair or to the superintendent. Most of the time, both, because if I get them, I share it with you.
Right.
You get them, you share it with me. We inform people that they need to go and contact whatever their, in this case, it would be the Ludlow Select Board, to tell the Select Board that they're planning on doing this and see if the Select Board wants to weigh in. We make the appointment, but you do it in consultation with the Select Board, so they have to be given an opportunity to make some kind of a statement. The boards almost never want to make any kind of statement because they would like not to be in the position, if there's more than one person applying, of saying who they like better. They want us to do that. But sometimes they will, so we give them that opportunity. I remind them that it is no longer their job to do it because they forget and think it is their job to make the appointment. It's not. And we try to have that happen before the next meeting, after somebody applies, when we would be inviting people to come to the board and say a little bit about themselves. We don't do lots of questions because you don't want it to be an interrogation. And if there's only one person and they've talked to the select board and no objections were raised, and they're a resident of the town involved, then you will vote to appoint them, because it's not a question of being qualified beyond being a town resident, unless there's some egregious reason otherwise. So we're looking for 2 people, so the only way there's a issue is if you wind up with 3. And in general, you give people at least a month from the time that it's been announced. We already started advertising for Paul's, and we only just put up the one for the second one. So, if we're meeting on the 1st, that's not quite a month. But if you wind up with 2 people, I think you're probably safe.
I think we'd be thrilled to have 2 people.
That would be great.
So
that's the process.
I guess when we talk about the budget, I understand we're looking at our immediate needs, but if you have a lot of people that are like, oh, close this school, or, you need to do this.
I don't know where that came from, to be honest.
I'm like,
do this on Facebook.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Handwrite everything.
Oh, is that right?
So if,
People started saying that at one of our bond meetings as well.
right, so it might be a good idea to talk about like other cost-cutting solutions for maybe not this fiscal year, but the next one, because we're going to be looking at that, because we're not going to be cutting no budget. Like, it's just going to keep going.
Waiting until October to talk about the budget for the following year is always too late. The time to start talking about it is now. It's just kind of.
I know that I've heard people mention that, Chester's full. Andover kids might want to come over to Ludlow. Would that be something fiscally helpful or
so I will tell you what we told other people about it, if it's okay, is that I can share in with all of you as well. I actually think I have one hard copy here. Online, the Vermont statutes, it is 16 VSA section 724 is a multiple page instruction for what a town has to do if it wants to withdraw. And we'll give public information, because it's public, to anybody who requests it. But a request to have us, and by us I mean the business office, Cheryl, spend the hours involved in analyzing that to decide whether it's good or bad for the district is not something that we should be doing until the town decides that it wants to move forward with it. At which point then this group would decide to put together a committee that would be studying this, and then you will be paying attorneys to look into whether it is in fact beneficial. So here's a hard copy of it, but you can find this online.
And then both Chester and Andover both have to have a majority of people in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I think every volunteer is.
It was sort of like when the whole.
Well, the districts are, it's complicated.
Another crazy thought.
Not crazy.
Abolish the Board of Education and return control to
Green Mountain has a restructuring committee that has met sporadically, that is meeting again tomorrow night, so I'm looking forward to it.
See, I told
Second late evening. So they're going to be, no, it's meeting tomorrow night. It's meeting tomorrow night at Chester Andover, and it's an open meeting, and since I know everybody's feeling friendly, you can certainly come and attend on Zoom. It is also something that this district could decide they wanted to talk about in those issues too. I don't think you need a committee, but when Chester and Cavendish and Andover, Baltimore, our board members are talking about that, it would certainly be realistic for people to attend. But the reason I'm talking when I want to go home is that the place where that conversation really has to start is not here. The towns and 5% of the voters have to decide that they want to make a petition. That's not us. And so when half a dozen people from a town say, I think we want to move, that's not, we should all start jumping through hoops.
Just if we have such.
But there is an existing committee, anyone can join.
The restructuring
So
committee is
Jamie,
definitely a
that's the
spot to
place
start.
to do
That's
this.
where, yeah.
It's-
All right.
Andover is part of the Greenmount Unified School District, and their articles of agreement had been part of the Chester Andover Elementary School. That's where their kids go to school.
And both.
I understand. Since they're part of us,
They're not part of you.
they're part of TRSU.
So's Mount Holly,
I know.
but you're not part of the Greenmount.
Does not TRSU have a, what's the word?
Like a blank choice.
Yeah.
We have a limited choice.
Yeah.
So it's 6 people between the two schools, only 6.
Oh.
And when I come to you and say there are more than 6 who would like to come, or you want me to book them in, you say no.
All right,
We can
so,
expand choice and not.
board self-evaluation. Nothing about Speedy on here, I hope. Board members are respectful of each other, the public and the administration. I think we did a very good job tonight, thank you. Board us, handled conflict openly and constructively. I think we did a good job. Board members focused on the role and responsibilities of the board. We did good there, all right. Board members act as a team once a decision has been made and work collaboratively throughout the decision-making process. All right. Someone second that.
I second.
All those in favor?
9:28.
Yeah.
Can I have the sign?